Well, all right, everybody, and welcome to the Lee Olson Show. Today, I've got one of my good friends with us to the show. This is Anthony Lucia. Anthony, say hi.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Lee.
Yeah, so this is the blood, sweat, and blessings portion of the show, as you know. And to get the blessings, you got to have some blood and you got to have some sweat. So we're going to dig into Anthony and we're going to find some really cool things that I think you can all relate to. And it's not hard to see God working in his story. So with no more ado, let's talk about the cool things with Lucia right now. So you were blessed with the announcer of the year.
Yeah.
So tell me about that real quick. Let's skip to the end and then we'll start back over. So what is the gravity of winning announcer of the year in the PRCA?
So I've got to preface this statement with a statement that my dad taught me from when I was young, that awards don't define you, awards don't make you. Awards are a great honor, but they aren't what you set out to achieve. You set out to achieve to be the best at whatever you're doing. And if awards come, then great. If they don't, then great too, because you're still striving to be the best every single day of your life and in what you do. And the gravity of winning announcer of the year for me, it was more of like an affirmation for the rodeos that had been hiring me. For me, it was more like it was just special because then they could say, well, we didn't bet on the wrong horse, I guess you could say. And it meant so much for me to all the rodeos that have been hiring me the last 4 years for them to now have an announcer of the year that's working for them. It was pretty special. And then obviously, I mean, I would be lying if I said that it didn't like make me happy, because obviously from my emotion, whenever I was awarded, I didn't believe it. Everybody's like, oh, those were fake tears. No, that was real tears out of disbelief that I won it.
Right.
And it was another God wink per se, in the sense that I was on the right path, because through the ups and the downs of everybody's life and career, there's a lot of times that you question and doubt certain things. And I'm not saying that me winning announcer of the year that's the end goal and that was what everybody set out to achieve, but it was a wink that, hey, you're doing good. Keep on the path that I put you on from God.
Yeah.
And I get those affirmations a lot throughout the day. And just in my spirit, I feel peace knowing that in what I'm doing is where God wants me to do. But to be recognized by the entire membership of the Pro Rodeo Cowboys Association on the list, even with the guys that I was on the list with, and I've been nominated. That was my second year nominated. But even being nominated for me was just like, holy cow, I'm on the same list as Bob Tallman and Wayne Brooks and Will Rasmussen and Garrett Yergin, who's just a young phenom. Like that in itself was rewarding,
Right.
But then to win was very special. But it meant a lot to be able to, the rodeos that I worked this year alone, you know, when I walk into the meetings, they're like, hey, it's our announcer of the year. And like, that's special to me. Like it's embarrassing. I get embarrassed when people are like, oh, here comes the announcer of the year. But because I still don't, again, this goes back to what my dad taught me. Like, I don't see myself as an announcer of the year. I still see myself as Anthony Lucia, who has to work hard every single day to not suck at his job and at life, and who's still going to make a ton of mistakes. But Wayne Brooks did tell me a pretty cool stat that I'm the 9th guy in the history of that award to ever win it in 44 years.
Wow.
The 9th guy ever. And so that was special, just because you think of the guys, Clem McSpadden and Hadley Barrett and Randy Corley and Bob Tallman and Boyd Polhamus and Zoop Dove, and I think Phil Gardenhire, and then Garrett. And I don't know if Phil won it, but he should have won it because he was incredible. But like, it's just very humbling, to be honest.
So what you're meaning is that some of the greats have just been beating that drum, just victory, victory, victory.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And for you to grow up in the industry, it's not like you just don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, what an honor. And those rodeo committees, like, you got to think, like, it's just what you said, like the horse that they bet on won, you know, but they're bragging on themselves too. Like when you walk in that meeting, you know, like we did it. This was a good decision.
Yeah. Well, it's neat because all the rodeos that I was able to work and am able to work before I ever got the buckle, they hired me for me. Wasn't hired me because I had announcer of the year because I was the most recent announcer of the year. They weren't hiring me because of how many NFRs I'd worked. They were hiring me because they liked Anthony Lucia and they liked my style and you know, whatever I brought to the rodeo. And so that means a lot. Like
Absolutely.
it's just, it makes you feel good to know that they trust you to be the voice of a rodeo that they work for and on for an entire year and have been. I mean, I get to work rodeos that are 88 years old and 80
Right.
years old and 100, you know, the oldest rodeo, Pecos, Arizona, or Pecos, Texas,
Yeah.
the west of the Pecos. But like those rodeos trust me enough because in essence, you can have the best rodeo in the world, but if you don't have a good announcer to convey what to the audience, what they're seeing,
Mhm.
to take care of the sponsors that pour into that rodeo and all the ticket buyers, the fans themselves,
Absolutely.
like that's an honor to even be asked to announce a rodeo. Like no big or small, it's an honor.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, if you folks can't tell, this is going to be a story with a happy ending. But let's go back. So obviously, this wasn't an overnight success, right? So
No,
interestingly enough, we've known each other for quite a while.
we have.
So we moved to Texas in 2010. When did you?
When did I? I've lived in Texas my
Yeah,
whole life.
in this area, in the Weatherford area.
Oh yeah, born and raised. Well,
Really?
Garner. So I
Wow.
was born and raised in Weatherford, and then when I was 11, we bought a place in Garner, and I lived in Garner my whole life. And then in, let's think, oh gosh, my math is terrible, but when I was 23, I moved to Millsap, and I moved in with Alan Bach, and I
Oh
lived
yeah.
there for 2 years. Well, we had our horses at Al Bach's house, and then I lived in a house with Paul Eaves, Curtis Cooper Smith, Will George, Kaleb, and then there was a guy named Sunshine that would,
Kaleb who?
I don't remember. He's not a team roper. He was
Okay.
Al's driver,
Oh, cool.
and he's a super good dude. And him and Cavanis, Kaleb Cavanis. Sorry, my names escape me sometimes,
No
but
worries.
not a great trait to have as an announcer. But we all lived in this little. It was a 4-bedroom house, and there was 5 of us living there. I lived in the dining room.
Right.
I didn't have a door on my, and but we were all like, a lot of those guys were going to college. I just moved out of my dad's, and I'd lived there and helped my dad. And I would still go and drive for my dad and help my dad at his rodeos because he was getting older. So I still wanted to stay committed to him, but it felt like at 23 years old. That's why I always tell people I'm 5 years mentally behind my age, even because I lived with my dad till I was 23. So it's just me and him.
Huh.
So,
Wow.
but I was committed to him and his career, and I knew physically he couldn't do what he was doing without my help.
Wow.
And so I did everything for him. I mean, everything but literally saddled the monkey and the dog. And I mean, from driving to just all the physical stuff and meeting with the announcers and the sound and committees, and I handled all that for my dad. So where
Wow.
he literally could be in the trailer, walk out, get the monkey out, saddle a dog and the monkey up, and walk into the arena. And then I would get his horse ready and everything like for his horse act, and then he'd work him, warm him up, and then I would warm him up, and then he'd go to it. So I was committed to my dad's career.
Wow.
But then, as every young man knows, you're like, all this stuff I've learned now, I want to put it to use.
Right.
And I knew that I couldn't. It was a tough, like my dad disowned me for a year, didn't talk to me when I moved out
At 23.
at 23 because
Wow.
he would text me and say, I'm going here on these dates, so that I knew when to come back and help get everything ready. And then I would go help him. He wouldn't hardly say nothing to me when we'd be in the truck for hours. And then we'd get home. I'd unload everything, take care of everything, and he wouldn't talk to me. Because I think he saw that more of as like I was abandoning him. I'm the youngest of all my brothers. So I was the last one. He wasn't married.
How many brothers do you have?
I had 4. We lost one in 17, but I got 3 brothers left. And or 2 brothers left. I'm sorry. There was 4 of us total.
And the rest weren't involved at
No,
that
they were
point?
all older, and I have one brother that's a doctor in Temple, and then my older brother Tommy Joe has so many successful businesses and endeavors and does all this stuff. And then my sister wasn't in the picture any longer, and so I was the last of his kids, and he felt, even though I was only living 15 miles away,
Right.
he felt like I was abandoning him, and he dealt with a lot of depression and different things like that, and a lot of mental issues, which helps me be more aware of. I can see signs of people that need encouragement and need help, and I'm very thankful for that. And I know is all, even though how hard it was, I know is part of God's plan of shaping me to be a tool for God to help people. But Uh, but when we lived in Millsap, it was like I wasn't in college, but I felt like I was in
Right.
college. Like it was, we'd rope all day and then we'd hang out every night and go it was such a fun point of my life. But then you have to think about like how to make money.
Oh, for sure.
And I was trick roping at that time, but my trick roping hadn't really taken off kind of how I'd hoped it would. And I wasn't I wasn't really sure. I'd always trick rope just to kind of, because I could be a specialty act like my dad. And it was kind of just a way for me. I was good at it and I worked really hard at it, but it was kind of a way for me to find my own identity a little bit. Like the start, I was
Right.
still Tommy Lucia's son, and I was still the monkey's brother, but I could trick rope.
Right.
And so trick roping, and I didn't really, I thought I was going to make a living team roping.
Right.
And for anybody that's very difficult to do. And
right.
So that was a learning process all in itself. But yeah, I lived in Millsap, and then we rented a place, in fact, in Lipan, me and a couple other guys.
In the S curve.
Yeah, in the S curve,
Yeah.
Bill Riddle's old place.
Yeah.
With that, we had a giant. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. I lived in my trailer. I had a 3-foot short wall steel trailer that I had traded for $3,500. I had a window unit in the front. I lived in that for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Until I had enough money to actually made a deal with Durham Trailer Ranch, and I leased a trailer to live in because that was my home.
Right.
And we got rid of the house in Lipan, or everybody kind of went on their own way. And so, but then I was like, well, I got to have a trailer to live in.
Right.
And so I traded around for this little living quarter. Didn't have a shower, a toilet, nothing. And I would park it, either at a friend's house and pay them a couple $100 to plug in. Didn't take much plugging in for that little AC unit, but
right.
And then had saved up enough money, and I was able to lease a trailer from Durham's, and it was a nice trailer, still not very big, but it was it was my home. And we parked on that place in Lipan, and they're all like, well, come stay in the house. We have an extra room. And I go in, and there's a giant hole in the floor in the living room. And I'm like, man, I'll just stay in the trailer. But yeah, I've always lived around here. And then I from there, I moved to Ryan Motes' house and lived there for 2 years in my trailer, roped with him every day. And I really was going to focus in on my team roping. And I did. And I roped a lot with him and had some success in some different areas. And then I finally, because of the George Strait, Motes is one of my best friends, and he was like, Anthony, it's time for you to buy a place. He's like, the whole goal here was for you to save up enough money to buy a place. And I was like, you're right. And so I started looking around, and a place came for sale like a mile from their house.
Oh, wow.
And so I worked out a deal with them where I could do like a lease to own kind of a deal, because I didn't have a big money for down payment. And some stuff went down in their family, and they're like, hey, we need a down payment. You got to buy it outright now. And I was 2 weeks before the George Strait, and this was in 2014. And I'm like, and it was $30,000. Like, I'll just talk numbers. It was $30,000. And I'm like, I'm sure everybody can relate, but you get that pit in your stomach. You're like, I'm about to be homeless.
Might as well
like,
be 3 million then.
Yeah, no. Exactly. And crazy, go to the George Strait, sold a saddle to Teskey's to get money for my entry fees at George, to go to the George Strait.
And Teskey's gives nothing
right
close to what it's worth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was one of my, like, I had 2 nice saddles, and I sold a saddle. They gave me $1,500. The George Strait fees were $1,500. And I had some money. I pulled weeds and did different stuff, because trick roping was so sporadic for me. Like, I'd have weekends where I would make really good money. Well, then I'd be off for a month.
Right.
But I was like, if I'm going to be a team roper, I have to be full force into it.
Yeah.
And with the cost of living, the entry fees, if you don't win a lot, like, I would win good, but then I would not win good. It's just a roller coaster. Anyway, so I go to the George Strait, and myself and Wesley Johnson, we won, I think we won 5th in the average, and it paid $38,000 a man.
Oh my God.
And
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And
thank you, God.
Yep. I mean, it, like, my wife, my old horse Hurricane, and you remember Hurricane, the big flax mane sorrel.
Yeah.
He's still alive. He's 27 years old now, and he's still alive, and he's just a pain in the butt. He's wild and just an idiot. And I go, hey, that horse and God are the reasons that we have this place now, because that allowed me to buy the other place. And then over, I guess it would have been 5 years, I fixed it up and made it into a horse place, redid the inside of the house, like all myself. And then would get my friends to come over and help me, like the new stuff, and fix it up, made it a nice place. And then we're able to sell that place, do good on it. And then we bought this place in Brock. So
That is awesome.
yeah, pretty cool stories.
Yeah, that's so fun to look back and hear stories like that, because it's like, I think it's overwhelming. Like when people meet, say us,
Yeah.
like a young farrier or a young announcer, they just look like they're standing at the bottom of this mountain, when it's like,
Yeah.
now it's like anybody who makes you feel like that after you've talked to them, I'm just going to say this for everybody listening. You need to get away from them.
Yeah.
Like if you get to around somebody that's telling you a story like Lucia just said, like everybody's went through some hell to get where they're going. Like nobody is really an overnight success, are they?
No, not at all.
And if they are, they're lying.
Well, if they are, it's going to be fleeting,
Oh,
honestly,
for sure. Yeah.
because you don't have the wherewithal when times get tough to keep going, and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that if you keep getting through this storm, at some point, the sun's going to break through, as long as you keep pushing.
Absolutely.
And as long as you keep working your butt off, because hard work is undefeated. The greatest thing, as hard of a man as my dad was, the greatest thing he ever taught me was hard work always works. It's
Absolutely.
undefeated. And that's been the time I could feel that in my life, because when I didn't work hard,
Yeah.
I was not successful
Mhm.
in anything.
Yeah.
Like whenever I would just go rope to rope, or just go rope to hang out with my buddies, and not really working on something or trying to get better, and being okay with just going and turning the steers in the same spot of the arena or whatever. And I know you got to build a foundation, but at some point you have to continue with that foundation, put up walls, put up a roof, put in
Right.
doors and windows to fully build that successful home. But everything I learned from not being as successful as I had hoped in team roping, and through that work ethic and the time spent, whenever I turned that over and put all of those same hours into my true passion of announcing, light switch,
Yeah, exactly.
floodgates opened up. And it's just crazy. But everybody, if you see somebody, you're like, oh, that was all handed to them, and this, that, and the other. No, even if it's a legacy deal, even if it's your dad or your mom is successful in an endeavor, and even if they do open a door for you, you still have to, when you walk through that door, be good at what you do and show that you have work ethic to stay in that room that you just got let into.
Exactly. Because I'm guessing, from what I know, like you've, being your dad's son,
Yeah,
almost made it harder on you, right? To get the jobs and stuff.
it did. Like my dad, and not necessarily harder. Like my dad, I watched my dad my whole life help Wayne Brooks get Calgary. He called back when Winston Bruce was running Calgary. Dad and Winston were great friends. He called Winston Bruce, hey, there's this good kid. I still distinctly remember this phone call, because we had just worked with him at Cave Creek, Arizona. And dad was like super impressed with Wayne Brooks. And he called Winston, had said, hey, there's this kid from Arizona that is dang good and would be great for the Calgary Stampede. Wayne gets Calgary, jump-started his whole career. Bob Tallman tells stories of my dad taking him at the very first convention at the Brown Palace and saying, this is the guy you need to talk to, like guiding him through the waters. Boyd Paul Hamus, I don't know if my dad helped Boyd so much as getting jobs, but more refining Boyd in his younger years of, hey, get a hat that's shaped good. I know you're from Wisconsin, but get a hat that's shaped good. And don't
Always important, folks.
Yeah,
Always
don't look
important.
like a gunsel when you're riding around the arena. Like if you're going to be in the arena, look like a cowboy.
Live it every day.
Yeah, live it every
what I
day.
say.
We do. We live it every day. But so I watched my dad have an impact on so many guys' careers. So when I was like, I'm going to become an announcer, my dad always encouraged me to be an announcer because, and since we've known each other, you probably understood this. He goes, I asked him one time, we would do these little shows where I would announce my dad's acts. I would trick rope. I would host the audience, and we would do like the 30, 45-minute shows where that was and I was young, like, and I was kind of announcing, and he always encouraged me. He's like, go out there and do this. We didn't have an option. Like my dad saw me as as a tool. We're not going to hire an announcer. You're going to announce. Exactly. And you don't have, I was the best labor possible. It was an internship.
Forever.
Exactly. But I said, Dad, do you really think I'd be a good announcer? He said, well, you like talking and you talk a lot. None of it makes any sense. So, yeah, I think you would be. And so that's the jump start to my announcing career. But no, when I started announcing and I'd ask Dad, like, hey, can you call some of these committees and stock contractors and who, I mean, he was highly respected. Not everybody liked my dad, but he was highly respected. And he's like, nope.
Why?
The reason was, and it was the same thing with my trick roping. He said, you're going to do this the way that I did this. He said, you're not getting a job because your last name. You're getting a job because of what you can do. And
how do you feel about that?
At the time, I didn't understand it. Now I'm so thankful for it because not one person can say you did this, that, or the other because of your dad. And I'm not knocking anyone that has had a helpful parent, but my dad was so old school. He was born on the streets of Minneapolis, had to fight every day just for survival. A lot of that, it was just him and his mom. I mean, like I can tell you stories that would make your blood just stop in your body because of the childhood that my dad had. Rodeo saved his life. Wow. Getting out of the streets. So we're Italian, and in Minneapolis, it was a lot of organized people within the Italian heritage.
Meaning organized crime?
Anyways, so he moved to Arizona to get away from all that.
Right.
And with his mom. And there was so that was they were trying to pull him in more to it. Mm-hmm. And he refused to do it because he knew it wasn't right.
Good idea.
And yes. And anyways, I don't want to get into all of it, but his dad killed himself. And no, if you can, oh yeah, I forgot we're on video. Killed himself. Yeah.
Air quotes are happening right now if you're online.
Yeah. He killed himself from that life. Oh, so and dad was very young. So because of that, at a young age, my dad was basically abandoned, had to take care of his mom.
Jeez.
And so my dad was very hard, and he was he was literally born and raised in the hardest, on the not in a good part of the neighborhood, not, right. You know what I mean? Like having to run to school so you didn't get jumped. Then when you got to school, trying to just survive in school. And then as soon as you got off school, would go and work at a restaurant, busting tables and washing dishes. And they had nothing. They would go and clean the government houses, and him and his mom would, just to make extra money. And like there would be just feces all over the wall and horrible houses. That's how they made money. Oh, man. Well, then as he got older, then started to pull him, trying to get him into that. And his mom was like, nope, we're not going through that again, because obviously her husband went through that. So they get to Arizona, and he had been on the summers. He would go with his half brother to Iowa and work on dude ranches. And he would literally, because he was the new guy, they would be like, here's a bunch of these crap sale barn horses that we bought for these dudes to ride, go break them.
What an opportunity.
Yeah. But exactly. But he didn't know the first thing about any of that. He was literally street city kid, but he learned.
Yeah.
How did he learn? By getting bucked off, by getting flipped over on, by all of that. So that started my dad's love of training. Wow. And then he trained 2 German Shepherds to protect his mom when he was at work, because she had gotten jumped and beat up and paralyzed by 2 guys that had beat her up and stole her money. Oh, so he became friends with a police officer, got 2 of their reject German Shepherds from their canine program. Dad actually trained them to protect his mom so that she could get to work or just get out of the house while he was at work, so that he didn't have to be there to protect her. So if that gives you a little insight as to what my dad came from.
Question. So she was paralyzed for life after
No, that? just for a while. She's in a wheelchair.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I'm glad you went into that.
Yeah. So that just gives an insight of who my dad was.
So tell me about, how did that affect your childhood, you think?
My brothers, we all talk about it, and it was it was not easy.
Yeah, I guarantee
And
it.
my dad was not great at relationships. Like he was married 5 times,
Right.
not great at relationships. And there was a lot of trauma there from his childhood that he never really got over until he was in his 70s, literally.
He didn't know how to be a dad because he didn't have a dad.
Exactly. He was doing, this is what we always say. He was doing the best with what he knew how to do. And it was easy for us at times to be so like get frustrated with him with how he was or how
Right.
hard he was on us and different things like that. But he didn't know any different.
Right.
He was never showed love other than his mom. Like he never showed love from a man, like what that looks like. He never knew that.
Right.
And that's, and so that's when I started trick roping, tell you, I'm opening up a lot, but the first year I got Fort Worth, Dad was very excited for me, trick roping. In
Awesome.
2010, he was so excited for me. Well, the next year he wanted to go back with his acts. Well, they hired me.
Oh no.
He didn't talk to me. He was so mad.
Show me on the scale right now. So this was when you were still living with him, or this was after?
I would have been moved
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did that go down?
He finally came. So he didn't talk to me for like 3 or 4 months because he was just mad.
Jeez.
Well, to get him involved, he had a reining horse that he had bought, and he had put some tricks on him, and I had helped him kind of put some tricks on this horse. Well, then whenever I got hired for Fort Worth, I'm like, hey, can I lease this horse from you for Fort Worth to use in my act? And at first it did not go over well, but he goes, yep, for this amount of money.
Wow.
Yeah. So I paid rent from the time I was 16 years old.
Uh,
For I guess that would have been 7 years. I paid rent.
just to confirm, you were your dad's apprentice. You did all of his legwork and you paid rent.
Yes.
No.
But it taught me, like, I created a leather business to make money. So the first blinged out headstalls that Teskey's ever sold came from me.
That's awesome.
I used to buy blank headstalls and bedazzle them and put spots and the little rubies on them and tool, like if they were blank headstalls, I'd tool them a little bit and make spur straps. And so like it taught me, like looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, why would he do that? He taught me how to survive. Like he literally laid it, even though he didn't give me, like if I wanted to, I didn't get my license till I was 18 because I didn't have the money to buy a truck. So, and I'm not saying this stuff like, oh, poor Anthony. I'm saying it like I'm thankful for it now.
An opportunity.
And if and when I have kids, or my wife and I have kids, I don't know if I'm going to go that route because I think there's better ways to do it. But for me, I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah.
Because it taught me, no matter how hard it gets, I can work my way out of it. I can work hard enough and hustle hard enough to survive, period.
Absolutely.
And like trick roping, and again, that's why, like, I wanted to be a team roper so bad. And I wanted to be great at team roping. One, because my dad never encouraged team roping. So it was like, because it was just a waste of money and blah, 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 blah. And I'll have a cool story to tell you about that the day before he died, that I didn't know he was going to die. But the day before he died, I'll tell you that story here in a minute. But so team roping was my way of getting out of his shadow. Like trick roping, I'm still a specialty act. I'm still, if I get any job, oh, it's because he's Tommy Lucia's son. Like it's still all of that. Right.
Right.
So then team roping, like I didn't want to make a living trick roping because I'm like, I want to be a team roper because it has nothing to do with specialty acts. It has nothing to do when you're a team roper, all that matters is the next 3 to 8 seconds.
Right.
Period. And you're only as good as your last run or your next run. Not even your last run. You're only as good as your next run.
Oh, for sure.
And so, and I always
so sad. Same with rush trainers and everything.
Yeah.
It's like being literally the best in the world champion, multiple world champion. Then you miss one. Then you're like, oh, he's losing it. He's lost it.
Exactly.
He never had it, actually.
Exactly. Exactly. And so like that's where team roping, dad one time he asked me, he goes, why do you love team roping so much? I said, because it's pure.
It is.
He's like, what do you mean? And I said, it's not on somebody's opinion. It's not voted upon. It's only dictated by your performance. It's a performance-based sport.
Absolutely.
It's not signing $1 million contract and hope you play good that year. It's I'm paying money to do this. And then I'm going to hope that I don't suck. and hope that my partner is also having a good day. And then we get paid.
And a decent steer.
Yeah. And then a good steer. And then your horse works good. And then the flagger's not a real butthole. And so, but long story short, to get back to your original question of how did it make me feel at the time, I didn't understand it, but I'm so thankful that my dad didn't get me into these rodeos, because my announcing career took off in 2021.
Yeah.
My dad had been dead for 5 years.
Definitely out of the shadow.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you talk about, I believe in God's timing is perfect and everything. And I know there's a lot of things in my life that I'm really glad I didn't have the opportunity to do it sooner.
Yeah.
Because I might have messed it up.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's the key.
So ultimately, you're sugarcoating. Your dad was pretty darn hard on you growing up. What you're saying. So everything turned out good.
Yep.
Now tell me, for the people that don't know, let's send your dad out of here on a positive note. I want to know what were his accolades, and he's known for Whiplash the monkey.
So I don't really want to, if we're going to send him out on a positive note, I don't want it to be his accolades, because you can Google Tommy Lucia and go to, he's Hall of
For the
Famer.
people that are listening that don't know.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
So he worked the NFR multiple times, not only as a barrel man in the 70s, but then once he transitioned, he worked every major rodeo as a barrel man, every rodeo. He worked Fort Worth like 16 times as a barrel man, and then like 6 more times as a specialty act. So he done everything you could do as a barrel man and as a specialty act. He was nominated Act of the Year multiple times, many times the NFR. Again, every major rodeo you could think of, from the Calgary Stampede to everywhere. Then he won Act of the Year 3 times when he was in his 60s.
Wow.
And then 3 years after his passing, he was inducted in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. The year before his passing, he was inducted in the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. A couple years before that, the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame, the Texas Rodeo Cowboy Hall of Fame. So he's in 4 different Hall of Fames right now. So,
Wow.
I mean, he was incredible. I mean, he's an icon in that industry. And he was, like I said, he was very well respected. And my dad at his hardest, the lessons that he taught all of us boys, all of us, and anybody who was willing to listen, you couldn't buy them. You couldn't buy those lessons, because they were the wisdom that he now, and I know it's old jokes like Dad always used to say, the older kids get, you realize that your parents weren't quite as dumb as you thought they were. And that's a true statement, because there's still implementations of his wisdom because he wasn't a hard butt all the time.
Right.
I mean, like, he shared a lot of wisdom, but it was, it was like you said that in this podcast, like, it was blood, it was sweat, it's tears, and that's how you become anything.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm sure there's easier ways, but my dad didn't know any easier way except the hard way.
Right.
And so that was, that's how he raised all of us. And my brothers, they even had it harder on me, or harder than me,
I bet.
because that's when they were around. Like, Dad was drinking a lot, and Dad was drinking a lot. He was a borderline alcoholic. Thankfully, before I was, or like 4 years into me being, less than that. I think 2 years before I was born, he stopped drinking altogether.
Oh, good.
He was on the verge of taking his own life, and a light bulb came on in his camper, and it was God, like, plain and simple. Like, he was about to take his life, and light bulb came on in his camper, and like God just poured into him and spoke to him, and basically just revelation took place, where your life that you're living is not the one that I've saved you from. You're going back to what all of that junk, and I have so much more for you. So then that's when Tommy Lucia had created a relationship with God, and like, he was a very strived to be a godly man. And did he miss? Sure, he missed a lot. Did he do a lot of really great things and help so many people, whether it's financially or just through wisdom? Absolutely. Was he hard on us? You bet he was. But I'm thankful for it. And my dad is still my hero, and I miss him every day. And I know that I know that he'd be proud of me.
Absolutely. That's all I could think about is how proud of you he has to be. And you've got an amazing place, amazing wife, and announcer of the year. What a
But more
blessing.
than all that, he would be proud of me for the man that I've become.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of your friends are very proud of you too. So pretty special.
All right. Enough of that.
Well, let's lighten this up a little bit.
All right.
Let's go back to when I first met you. So when I first came down here too,
Uh-huh.
it was 2010, and we didn't have anything. Like my in-laws actually cashed their life insurance policy to give us the 30,000 to buy our $170,000 place that we
Yeah.
fixed up and sold.
Yep.
And then bought this one.
That's
So
awesome.
very similar.
Yeah.
But we used to go to this place called Cross S Roping.
Yeah.
And if you've got your phone out, I want you to YouTube right now. Anthony Lucia, Lee Olson,
Yeah.
which should pull it up, but Cross S Arena and Squirt. I had a 3-year-old. Like we didn't have anything, literally nothing.
Yeah.
And I roped with Rickey Green every day,
Uh-huh.
who is a mountain of a man. I have loads of respect, and I know you do too.
Oh, yeah.
He truly changed my life. And honestly, the lessons he taught me, like they still affect me today.
Yep.
It's not, roping was the smallest.
Yeah.
Like here's a quick example for politics. He was such a funny guy because he would literally give you the shirt off his back, literally take it off, give him his rope, give him saddle, all this stuff. But he'd also call you a raving moron and tell you that is absolutely the dumbest thing I've ever heard. All in the same deal, but he did it out of love, right? It was a strange mix because I've only known like really tough guys and really churchy people, like good people, you know, like you'd see in the church, then you'd see these rough people. I never saw one in the middle. And he's so awesome. But he's talking about politics, and he says, something about politics. And I said, man, I just like being over here, living in my own little world.
Yeah.
And I like it that way. And he goes, I like living in my own world too, but they're coming in mine.
Yep.
And as I get older now, I'm start thinking, yeah, I mean, that's your responsibility to go vote. That's your responsibility to do you as an American.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I got some Rickey Green stories.
Oh, he's funny.
Justin Parrish is the one who taught me how to rope.
Cool.
But then as I got further along, then I started going to somehow or another, Rickey like took to me.
Yeah.
And I saw him at a jackpot. He's like, come rope anytime. That's when he used to live next to Clay Cooper.
Yep.
And
I lived by him.
Oh, okay. So I would go there and rope there. And he's the one who taught me 2 swings wherever they're at. Like he taught me how to reach, like plain and simple. And still one of my most favorite things to do. But the one time I was heeling and I didn't know how to heel, but I could handle a rope pretty good from trick roping.
Right.
And I would heel one and my feet would come out of my stirrups and like come to my D rings. And he'd be like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
And he would just laugh. And you know, I still miss his laugh. And he'd go, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you a sponsor for the bottom of your feet, so that whenever you do heel one and your feet come up, your sponsor gets seen. He's like, we're going to take the sponsors off your shirt. We're going to put them on your feet, on the bottoms of your feet. So when you heel and your feet come to your D-rings, they can see your sponsors better.
Right.
And like, I still remember, and I'm still remember, and the Clay was sitting over there and just shakes his head and laughs. And I love Rickey Green. God, I love Rickey Green.
Me too. Yeah. He was so funny. Like he would be like, he'd give you anything. Like immediately, as soon as we got there, we didn't have any family or anything. Yeah. And he would invite us over for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for anything. Like I remember one time I called him when we're starting to get to be kind of buddies. I said, hey, I got a water leak over here. He goes, what do you need me to do?
Yeah.
That's all he said. What do you need me to do? And he came flying down his road. Maybe 500 yards apart or something like that. Yeah. But he comes like literally driving as fast, dangerously possible, shows up like open hands, like, what do you want me to do? Yeah. Like here, ready. But he would let people ride his number 1 horses that are like 3s. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. And he actually would call that dumbing them up. He goes, you got to dumb them up a little bit because they got to work no matter who's. And he would always say, horses got to work fresh. Yeah. Said, get on them, make a circle and rope.
Yeah.
Like this lope them for an hour thing ain't going to work. So it's pretty funny. But he would also say, you know why people drive 15 miles an hour through a parking lot? No, why? Just because they've never been drug out of their truck and had their ass whipped. That's why. I
That's
missed
great.
him so much.
Yeah, he's a great man.
Okay. Positive note. Pull up. If you got your phone, you need to Google Anthony Lucia and Lee Olson, and you're going to see the desperation times and how we lived our life. You'd think people that were poor, that were barely making it, would be super conservative.
Got to get that first day money.
No, you can't win every round if you don't win the first round. And the average always takes care of itself. So, do you remember this run?
Oh yeah, I was on Peanut, who I could outrun, and I'm not a very fast guy at all. But I did learn that if I actually used my spurs, Peanut would run.
Right.
But I was so concerned about reaching. Like I watched that video the other day. You sent it to me about something, and I watched it, and I'm like, why am I not kicking? Like I didn't have to reach as far as I did.
There's literally 60 foot of rope there between the two of us, at least 50.
And we're in the middle of the arena, not like we were right out of the box. Like we're in the middle. That steer was strong in our defense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like my 3-year-old, like that's all I had.
Yeah.
So that's the one. He went to the US finals as a 3-year-old.
Jeez.
Like the back cinch billet had to go around. Like, but you know, I sold that horse to Patrick Smith, and then I got to build a nice horse barn because of that horse.
Exactly.
So it's not hard to look back and see blessings as a.
Oh, for sure.
So you used to live. I know a tidbit of this. Fill the rest of America in here. So you used to live with all of those guys.
Yep.
And you're roping every day. So we have a good friend, mutual friend, Paul Eaves.
Yep.
Tell us about when Paul was that age. Was he, from what I know, he was a hardworking, roped all the time, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Paul was 18 when he moved down here. He had just won the wildfire with Kelsey Parchman. So he won $50,000.
An 18-year-old with 50,000 that just moved to Texas.
Yep. But he then bought a horse for 40. Oh, wow. So he bought the buckskin of, I think it was Joel's or Allen's. So he bought that horse. So he didn't have a lot of money, but Paul was it's incredible. Like we would go to, granted, I had 2 horses. So actually, yeah, I had 2 horses. So we would rope at Al's, and then we would every day, and then we'd work the shoots or whatever they needed to do or help with the school or whatever it was. But Paul would rope at Al's, and then he would go to Dave Motz's house. Then he'd go to rope with Travis Tryon. And then if there's somebody else on the way home that he could rope, and he would have 3 or 4 horses, and he would rope literally all day at 4 different places. Anybody that would turn him steers, he would go rope with them. And then he'd show up and he'd watch roping videos. And we had one of our roommates, Curtis Coopersmith, who is now roped really, really good, but now he's a real estate mogul in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And just an incredible hard worker. But it goes to show what Al, and even like the way that my dad taught us, where even if you aren't successful in that certain endeavor that you're working towards at that moment, if you work your butt off trying to be successful, and even if it doesn't pan out, those same lessons you learned in that will translate into the next thing that you're going to be able to be successful at, or the next thing or the next thing. Like it's building blocks.
Absolutely.
And Curtis took everything he learned from Big Al and the wheel and how to prioritize and work hard and things like that. And now he's an amazing real estate mogul in Oklahoma City. But Curtis and Paul would just go at it, because Paul would get home from roping, and whatever food was in the house, he would eat it. And Paul is a fit, slender man, but has the metabolism. I don't even know how you'd explain it, but like could just eat everything. And so he would get home, and Curtis was very organized, and he would buy food to last him the week. And Paul would just get home and raid the cupboards, raid the fridge. Like if there was food leftovers in the fridge, Paul was eating it. It didn't matter if it said Curtis on it. Didn't matter if it said "do not eat Paul." He was eating it. And so, but seeing Paul, like when Paul won this world title in 18, like it made me emotional, because I'd literally seen him from, I guess it would have been 10 years before that. In 2008 is, I think, when we lived at Al's. Seeing the amount of work that he put in that I just witnessed, let alone after that year that we all lived together,
Mhm.
you know, whenever he went on, and I don't remember where he moved to, but he lived in Millsap somewhere. Anyways.
Yeah.
But that's where now everything that Paul Eaves success wise experiences, I'm just like, yep, as it should be.
Absolutely.
The fact that I mean, he's won 2 world titles. He can win 20 if he wants to. Like, he's just, because of his work ethic, because of his mindset, because of where his foundation in God is, and then everything else. And it's just, and now to see him as a family man and his awesome kids and his wife Amanda, and
No, she's a textbook strong supporting woman, isn't she?
and she's got a lot of sass, which you need with Paul, because Paul is also, he's sassy, but you can take out the S, and and so he's the nicest guy in the world, but he's you know, he's Paul. And so, but no, it's just neat to see, like, where all of us, like we were talking about the other day, myself, Will George, who now owns a successful flooring business in his home state of Iowa, making however much money he wants to make, Curtis, Paul, and then me, like, we talk every once in a while, all of us, and we're just like, how cool is that? Like, we were all just broke,
Right.
living at Al Box house, getting yelled at for not cleaning our pens. And, you know, like, all of that lessons that Al taught us, even though it maybe didn't resonate with us right then and there, it did over time. And it's just neat to see his whole career.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I've always liked you, as they're kind of cut from the same cloth, similar. And Paul is too, I think, because we've shod for him off and on for a long time, and we shoe him if there's a problem, pretty much, and we or as good ones. And Jade, I think we were shoeing her when he won the world that year, and I remember that 10th round run. No one gave him that run.
Yep.
I remember it like it's in my head. Like, they might have won the round too, or
I don't
placed.
remember exactly how it fell out.
I remember the steer slightly stepped left,
Yep.
and he dirty hung it on him, and Paul roped him on the first hop. I'm
Yeah.
like, holy hell.
Yeah.
That's how you win the world. Slam
Yep.
the door.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I think they had to win third or better in the round to win the world.
Yeah.
And then they did exactly what they needed to do on a steer that was not designed for that run. And so, but that's just a testament to hard work. I mean, like, Paul's roped. I mean, I know everybody who makes the NFR, makes a living team roping, runs a lot of steers, but witnessing it firsthand, I was like, okay, that's
Absolutely
the real deal.
And the last thing I'll say is, if you ever watch Paul ride a heel horse, like I get to see him a lot with Jamie going to a lot of rodeos, you'll never see him pull on one in the corner.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, it's the most committed guy I've ever seen.
Yeah.
To just laying his hand down, being just a little late, and then he's there on the first hop, game over. Like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. Paul makes healing look far easier than it even is.
Right.
And we were talking the other day at the timed event, and he was there helping Eric and a couple other guys. And he was talking to me about, like, when he had all of his shoulder issues, how he changed his whole style to be able to heal the steers somewhat less painful than it was if he brought his elbow up this high. And I'm like, you're telling me you changed your how you did everything? He's like, yeah, oh yeah, I've changed it 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, that's incredible to think about, because you're like, once you figure out how to heal that good at that level, that's how you do it. And then you make the NFR every year, you win world titles, blah, 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 blah. But then to see him do that, and like constantly refining, constantly changing, constantly evolving to this, how fast it is today, to everything, like, that's just it's mind blowing to think about. Like, holy cow.
Well, I think it's a good testament to, like, you're never done growing.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you think you're the best, someone's probably about to pass you.
Yep.
But one thing that he said, speaking of the shoulder thing, is he was here one day. We were shoeing, and just talking to him. He just had shoulder surgery. And keep in mind, he makes his money roping.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm one of those guys, like, I want to have a plan for the plan for the plan.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, so who you going to rope with when you get healed up? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, shoot, I don't know. I said, you don't know.
Yeah.
I said, how do you not know? said, well, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
long ways away.
Yeah.
Well, it's like 2 months.
Mhm.
Like entries are going to open in a month. I mean,
Right.
like you need to kind of figure this out.
Yeah.
And what he said to me, I'll never forget. He said, as long as I worry about being the best healer in the world, I'm going to get a good header.
Yep.
Because if you think about his situation, it doesn't matter how good you heal if you don't have a good header.
Yep.
It was like, okay, a lot of, and he's not cocky, he's not arrogant, is he?
No,
He just said
not
it
even.
like, as a matter of fact, like, as I'm going to worry about me, they'll come.
That's him. That's who Paul Eaves is he's always been like that, where it's, nope, if I want to be the best, I have to rope more than everybody. And he's always had good partners for that reason, because he'll go rope, he'll work. Like he just, he's a driven, focused person that, okay, I missed one. The next one I'm going to heal to win the round.
Yeah.
Like,
and then I don't, yeah, exactly. And then I don't talk to him after that or whatever. Show up in California, don't talk to him about it again. Show up in California for the rodeos. And I'm warming my horse up. And I look over. I said, Paul, who are you roping with? I said, Derek Begay.
Yeah.
I said, oh.
You did okay, son.
Decent intro back into team roping.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he had other good runs every place else. And then now he's got Eric Rogers. So how about that?
Yeah, he's done well. No, all good. Thank you.
So did we talk about you buying your first place on here, or was that before?
No, we did.
Okay.
We did, because I did go to the George Strait and had enough money to buy that place. And then, so yeah.
Yeah. And so you were trick roping back in around that 2010 era when you're living with Smothers in the S curve there. And I remember you trick roping like in a green costume, right?
Yeah.
Was your rope on fire?
I no, it glowed in the dark, glowed in the dark. I don't know how to say that. It glowed in the dark.
Well, you don't talk for a living.
That sounds very odd when I say that. It glue in the dark. I don't know. It lit up when you hit it with a blue gel.
Oh, wow.
So I was the first person to do fire ropes, and I did that at the 2009 Great Lakes Circuit Finals, or excuse me, 2010 Great Lakes Circuit Finals. I did fire ropes and fire bullwhips. And so I bought these. I found this Kevlar made rope from overseas in England. And so I ordered like this whole spool of Kevlar rope that wouldn't burn up, but it was like movie rope. And I fashioned a trick rope out of it. And it was this big, heavy stuff that like did not feel good at all. But I could do a butterfly with it, and I could do a flat loop with it. So you soaked it in kerosene, and you'll have to ask Smothers about this, because I almost burned his house down one time. And after we lived in that place, now before we moved into the place in on the S curve in Lipan, I lived for a few months in my trailer at Smothers' house. He had a place over by in Weatherford, North Weatherford, right by Silverado, kind of down. It was a very not a nice place, but it was a home plug-in for me.
Right.
And anyway, so I was practicing for this, and what I didn't realize is if you over soak these ropes, the splatter would like shoot off of it. So I'm practicing for the Great Lakes Circuit Finals, and I'm doing these ropes on the driveway. Well, I got a call or something, or I was late somewhere. So I practiced, put the ropes, you could put them in water, and then they would set them out and they would dry up and you could use them again. Well, what I didn't know, we get a call, and we might have been going to a jackpot. We get a call that says, hey, y'all's house is on fire. And I'm like, we're not even home. How did this happen? And come to find out, I had lit the yard on fire.
Oh, geez.
A leaf had blown up into the door of this old wooden house, like, and settled in and just completely smoked the door.
Oh, my goodness. And
we got it. Thankfully, we got it out, and the neighbors got it out. Everything was okay. But Smothers is like, no more practicing your fire ropes here at the house. But I go to the circuit finals, and I'm going to unleash it. And there's 10,000. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's one of the best circuit finals because they sell out. It's All American Pro Rodeo or something, but they sell out. There's thousands of people there, and so I'm doing this fire rope, and Seth Jones went with us. And you remember Seth Jones?
Oh, yeah.
He went with us. It was me, Smothers, Seth, and somebody else. I don't remember who, but so because we were going to rope on the way out there and then on the way back. And I catch him. I'm doing the fire rope around me. Well, Seth's job was the fire extinguisher guy. Okay. So I'm doing the fire rope around me and like it's going, it's like I can hear because nobody had ever seen this before.
I feel like you had one job coming.
Yes. Yes. So Seth goes, Lucia. And I'm like, what? He's like, you're on fire. And I know. It's like, I'm feeling it. Right. And all of a sudden he goes, Lucia. And I turn back again and he just, my back was on fire. And when I turned back like this, he hits me in the face with the fire extinguisher fluid. And I don't know if you've ever been shot in the face with an actual fire extinguisher with the powder.
Yeah.
It dries your whole mouth out immediately. Okay. Mind you, in my act, I always talk to my microphone. I can't talk. Okay. So I throw that rope down, and my last thing is this fire bullwhip. Well, one of the sparks from the fire got into my bucket with my whip in it of kerosene, and it's just blazed up. And so I kick it over to get my whip out. Again, the music's, the crowd's still cheering. They think it's all part. The arena is damn near, whole thing is on fire from this kerosene because I've oversoaked everything. So I kick the bucket over and just, I mean, it's this much kerosene fluid. So it just goes everywhere in an arena, but it soaks into the dirt. So it's just flaming up. Right. So I grab the fire whip, I crack it twice. The whole arena is on fire. My stage is on fire and not actually on fire, but the kerosene is just everywhere. And so they have to bring in rakes and like rake it all out. It's still like blue flame is coming up through. Why am I telling this story? There's a reason that was the last place I ever did that. Because then I went to the green pants that everything glowed in the dark whenever you turn the lights out and you hit like I got hit with the blue gel, which is like a spotlight, and they put a blue, basically like a see-through sheet over it. And it creates a blue light, and this fluorescent paint that I use for all of my stuff. Cause they were like, Brad Barnes, I'll never forget this call. He's the head guy at Fort Worth. And he calls me and he goes, Anthony, he's real stern. Heard it got a little hot in Louisville for you. Because I was planning on doing this act at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo the next year in 2011. Like, they're bringing me back. I can't do the same thing. I did a very traditional act the first year. And I'm like, yep. Well, if you're coming back, we need to figure something else out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like in October.
Right.
So I have 3 months. And so I come up, because of how my brain works, like go to work, come up with painting my ropes, painting my pants, come out as dressed as an old cowboy, big loop around a horse, very traditional, stand up on him, trick rope. And then the announcer says, but Anthony, I thought you were a new generation trick roper. I thought you were bringing the new school to an old school place. And that's when the music would change from, like, you know, the Cowboys theme to rock and roll. I'd rip my chaps off, ripped my outer shirt on. I was just all painted up.
Neon.
And then neon, go to work. And then we had pyro on my stage. And like, I'd get done doing the Texas skip and I'd take my hat off. And
I remember that. Yeah.
And the pyro would go off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's how the lime green pants, and because I caught myself on fire and almost tried to burn a house down. And
so tell me about that. So did it all go off as is all part of the show, or was part of it kind of like, sorry about that?
At one point, I think people thought it was part of the show, and then they quickly realized when I kicked the bucket of flames over and grabbed my whip. And the committee for sure knew it was not part of the show, because I had done it the night before without any issues, because I didn't over soak. But I'm like, got to make it better, got to make it bigger. I'm going to soak these up. The flames are going to be bigger. I'm going around myself. I jumped through it. And so, yeah, there's that.
Well, as our friend Joe Hub Baker would say, you'll never know where the line is if you don't push it a little.
There you go. Very, very true.
Oh, man. What great stories.
Yeah. A lot of them.
You know, we have a mutual friend, John Harrison.
Yep.
Who is, what do they call it when you win everything?
He's just a dominant force.
No, I mean, like, he won Entertainer of the Year, Coors Man in the Can, and
the Grand Slam, I guess you could say, because he was what's not the trifecta, but what's the Triple Crown?
Yeah, Triple Crown.
Yeah, the Triple Crown. But then I say he got a Grand Slam because he also got an NFR buckle.
Yeah.
So he got 4 buckles from the last 2 NFRs. And then before that, he's the most decorated entertainer in all of pro rodeo. In fact, in all of pro rodeo history, there's no one that has won more than he has.
It's got to be, you know, like I go to a lot of rodeos. For those of you that don't know, my wife, Jamie, is trying to make the NFR in the barrel racing, and we go to 100 a year. So we see a few rodeos.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. But, you know, sometimes like you're the tip of the spear, and John is the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
So when you two get together, like, it's like cheating.
It's fun.
You know, like it's just, I feel like y'all don't need a script. Y'all don't need nothing. Like,
No.
stand back and watch this.
Yeah.
But it's not always the case.
Yeah.
Like sometimes at some rodeos, I'm like, I want the best for everybody. I truly do.
Yeah.
But some rodeos, I'm like, man, I feel bad for this guy.
Yeah.
Or like sometimes the clown's bad or the announcer is or whatever.
Yeah.
So to see you guys pair up, like, I just feel the need to bring up like how good of a guy John is.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Like we went to the Florida rodeos and, you know, barrel racers, they like to get in the arena. He had it lined up with the committee men, all of them. It was good for us to get in the arena. So we show up late and it's this big, huge indoor. And we show up and apparently he didn't ask the ground guy because this is a big deal and he's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big deal because this is the ground. And this John just immediately goes into good guy mode.
Yep.
Like Lane Frost from 8 seconds, you know, like when Tough almost gets in the fight and he's like,
yeah.
he did that same exact thing.
Yeah.
And he hook, line, sinkers this guy so good that as we're done, she's done riding, we're walking away. This guy is literally on a gator driving up beside, talking to John, like speed up, stop, speed up, stop on the way back to the trailer. It's like, he truly has a gift.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of acts. Like, I think one of the things that you discredit yourself for why you're so good is you're a horseman. You understand the whole thing. It's not just talking about it. No one ever had to tell you to shape your hat, I would assume.
Sure.
Right?
No.
And I think that's what John has going too, because his horse Snoopy, like, he's got such a funny act now because he used to do the fall off the horse thing.
Yep. The trick riding and all that. Yeah.
Which you have to be an amazing rider to make it look that hard.
Yeah.
But also now he's got one where they let the paint out. It's a re-ride, you know, for the folks at home here. He'll act like he's trying to tame this wild horse when he's got this horse trained to chase him into the stands, put his head over the fence and come at him.
Yeah.
And then he also has his horse trained to where you can't lead him.
Yeah.
And he's got him trained to plow him over. So in his act, you can't lead this horse and he's trying to plow him over. And then he makes him lay down. And
he doesn't even make him lay down. Like he takes him like to the middle of the arena. And then with one swift movement, that horse, I've never seen a horse lay down that fast ever.
Right.
Like in it. And then the horse lays down immediately. And then John like lays up against him and he's like, oh, this is so hard trying to catch this horse. And the horse is just laid down behind him. It's announcing it. I have to keep myself like from laughing as hard as I want to.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is he's a horseman, you know, like he's got the same thing going on as you do. Like that was like, I'm kind of crusted, I guess, when you see some of those acts, it's like, oh, this is going to be
sure.
But then you see guys like him and, what's the great guy? He's
Bobby Kerr.
Yes.
Yeah.
Him and his wife.
Bobby Kerr has forgot more about horses than the greatest trainer will ever know.
Exactly.
Bobby Kerr is unbelievable at horse training.
And a good dude.
Oh my, the best. Like, like if you imagine how, I don't know how to, and not to get into a stroking contest on all these guys, but legitimate Bobby Kerr is, in my mind, he's like the old school cowboy guy that says what he means what he says. There's no gray area.
Right.
And he is genuinely a good human and cares about people.
Yeah, exactly. You can be that guy, that black and white guy without being a prick.
Yep,
too.
exactly. And Bobby Kerr has nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it. And I adore that guy. And he's such an incredible, just animal trainer.
Oh, for sure. And his act's fun.
Yeah, his act's awesome.
The dog leading the horse and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think it's stroking. I think it's exposing the good guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is never underdone.
Yeah. No, I agree. You're right.
Can't be underdone.
For sure.
What about Justin Mckee? How has he helped your career?
So growing up, and I want to say this quickly about John Harrison
Sure.
before we move.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
so
yeah.
the first time I ever met John Harrison, he was wearing white spandex fringe shirt, had a misshapen cowboy hat, and was trick roping and Roman riding. And that's when I was still helping my dad around. And I was just like, who is this guy? Because it
Right.
was just like he could do it. He could trick ride, he could Roman ride, he could trick rope, and you could tell he was a great entertainer just by his mannerisms. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like Monty Montana reborn.
Right.
Like he's just an incredible guy. And now to see where his career has evolved into as being a clown and an entertainer, it's remarkable. And again, hard work and being a good dude. It's crazy what it can happen.
And fun fact about him is he is Freckles Brown
Yeah.
grandson.
Yeah.
And of all the buckles that guy's won, he's probably won enough buckles to fill a normal bedroom.
Oh yeah.
He wears Freckles Brown world champion belt buckle.
Yeah.
To me, that's cool.
That's so neat to take such pride in your family and not even about yourself. Like it's so neat.
And he's got a big living quarters horse trailer for the simple fact of, he said if his kids aren't in school, they're going together.
Yep.
And he's got his wife. I haven't met her, but she sounds like a beast.
She's out.
And I mean, speaking of business, they are super sharp.
Mm-hmm.
They have a bunch of rentals up in Oklahoma and a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah, they've done well.
So one more thing. So imagine this guy. Like, it's easy to get pretty proud of yourself when you've won as much as he has and stuff. And we're in Oklahoma, or we're in Florida at those rodeos, long ways from home, and we rodeo out of a bus, and we got our 2 kids with us, and it's a Sunday, and one of my boys wet the bed, and in his bloomer, he's got a washer and dryer.
Yep.
And he not only, like, I just told him about it because we couldn't find dry cleaners.
Yeah.
And it's a big issue, right? He washed it, dried it, folded it, brought it back to us. Come and picked it up and washed it and then brought it back to us.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like, whatever that guy needs, he's got it. He's got it.
He's a good human. There's a lot of them in rodeo. I mean, and in life, it just opening your eyes up and having the opportunity to, it's easy to judge people from what you see in the arena and like, oh, I bet that guy's goofy and this, that, and the other. But then whenever you actually get to experience them as humans outside of their work, that's when you truly get to see how awesome people are.
Before we get on to Justin, can I say one more funny story?
Absolutely.
Mutual friend of ours, Matt Robertson. So rodeo used to be all I cared about. And I went to the college finals a few times, and it seems like every year I was there, Matt Robertson did just amazing, at least the first year. And then we go to all the pro rodeos and stuff, and he's doing amazing there. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if you're heading or heeling or throwing washers or whatever. Like, that guy's a threat. Yeah. And then he come to find out he's a musician too. It's like, that's unfair.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I was just the whole time rodeoing and stuff. Like, I made the circuit finals twice. Like, that was my goal, right? That's what I was doing. And it's all my whole passion. Mm-hmm. And everywhere I showed up, this guy beat me. It's like, this guy's a prick. and he wouldn't talk to me either. But that was in my version. So you have to be careful with preconceived notions. Is my point of the story. Because I get to meet this guy years later, because he moved to Arizona and stuff, and I was still up north in Texas. Never really saw him again, but I was just convinced he was a prick, because turns out he's just quiet.
Yep. It's weird. Yeah.
Because I got to visiting with him at this place in California, and he is convinced he's the worst healer that's ever made the NFR, and then backs it up with, it was because he had the lowest number and this reason and that reason. And he's just the most humble man ever. I could not be any farther off in what I thought. So I think that's the danger. That's why I tell about the good guys. It's like, that's important knowledge that needs brought to light.
I agree.
And that guy's funny.
Yeah.
And he can sing and play literally any music, musical instrument.
If it's got strings, he can play it. Yeah, he's awesome. And that's what's neat even about podcasts is they allow people who maybe just see a person on TV or maybe just know of a person, or if you see them competing or whatever it may be. And I'm sure I do the same thing with sports stars where I'm like, oh, that I bet that guy's a real jerk. And I've actually gotten to meet some of the guys that I thought were jerks. And I'm like, nope, I'm a fan of that guy because
Yeah.
they're just good people. But if they're passionate competitors or, like you said, quiet, there's people that prejudge me. My gosh, so many times just because all they see me is when I'm my big flamboyant self, like, well, whether I'm announcing or doing broadcasting, like for the Cowboy Channel or something. And, and I have to be, you have to elevate your energy level and you have to, be very descriptive in your words. And I'm a big adjective guy and I love saying cataclysmic and different things like that. And so they're like, oh, but this guy's a DB.
Right.
Then they sit down and have a beer with me and they're like, you're still DB, but I like you a little bit better now.
You're a really cool DB.
I don't think I'm cool at all, but I know cool people and I'm not one of them. But that's why I love doing podcasts. And even like we started a podcast, one of my friends and I, Brad Narducci, and it's called Cowboy Mafia. And there's been people that I knew did not like me. And then now that they've listened to that podcast and kind of just got to see me being me, they're like, dude, let's hang out sometime. And I'm like, I've been trying to tell you that I mean, like, come on, man.
I'm cool.
I mean, I don't know if I'm cool, but I know that I'm fun to be around sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
And so, it's fun. And that's why I'm grateful to be on this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. No, I've listened to your podcast and, you had,
it's very different than this one.
you had Michelle.
Oh yeah.
And you had,
Ivy Savins.
Ivy.
Yeah.
That was funny.
That was one
Those
of our
girls are
first
funny.
ones. And as you know, podcasting, you learn a lot as you go. And you're just like, if you listen to your first podcast compared to this one, you're like, oh my gosh, what was I doing?
Right.
But as you learn a lot. And but those two girls, and that was the heart behind our podcast, is we want people to see the fun side of all of these fierce athletes that they get to watch, and all of these stars. And like, we've got some big names lined up because we want people to see their fun side and like see that they're just normal people that maybe they are great at something, but that doesn't mean that they're cocky or that they're arrogant or maybe they're fierce competitors. Like, if people got to know, it's like JB Mooney. How many people hated JB Mooney for the longest time because he would throw his bull rope and kick the trash can? The guy hated to lose.
Right.
You can't really knock him for that when your whole life is poured into this one thing for 8 seconds. And then you don't do your job. If you're not mad at yourself. Now, granted, I'm not saying that some of the things that even modern day rodeo athletes do after they're not successful, I'm not saying that, because I think there's a level of sportsmanship in class that should be involved. However, Joe Beaver says, show me somebody that is good at losing and I'll show you a loser.
Absolutely.
Oh,
right.
And that's not being mean. That's just the truth. If you're okay with losing, you can't be okay with losing. You have to. Now, there's ways to react to it where it's not off-putting to kids watching.
Right.
You can lose, be mad at yourself, learn from it and move on. Or you can be, if you're a passionate person, and outward. I played golf with my family yesterday and I only lost 2 of the 18 holes, but I was mad at those 2 18 holes or those 2 of the 18 holes because I was like, I'm supposed to be better at this than you guys because I get to golf more. I expect more out of myself. Tommy Joe, my older brother's like, why are you called me some name I'm not going to say on this. And I'm like, I'm not, but I know that I play more golf than y'all and I work at this harder than y'all. I'm supposed to be better than you guys.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that makes sense. You do golf a lot. And I'm like, well, whatever.
Right.
But
such a great hobby when you're gone rodeoing though.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect because I can fly places, rent clubs, take clubs, send clubs with people.
Most beautiful scenery in the world are golf courses.
Oh my word. That's been the, I'm so happy that I found that hobby because like rodeoing, and you know this from being on the competitor side, and I've been on the competitor side too, but doing what I do, they're like, oh, you just show up and, announce for 2 hours and you're done. No, the amount of on that you have to be, the minute you step off that airplane and you're getting picked up by a committee person, you have to be on.
Well, I know you're big on prep too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Hours upon hours of prep. And so that's where golf is like for those 3.5, 4 hours, Nothing else matters except to me and my horrible golf game.
Let's mix it up right now.
Okay.
Rapid fire questions.
Oh gosh.
You ready?
I'm slow.
You can't think about it. You
Okay.
have to just quickly answer.
All right.
What's the best barrel horse that's ever lived?
Scamper.
What's the best head horse that's ever lived?
Thumper.
Who changed team roping the most?
Oh. Speed.
Fair enough.
I think Speed and Driggers, because, and I know there's reachers before them like Dole Gellerman and guys way back when, but like in the modern era, I feel like Speed changed it, and then Driggers took it to another level because he was doing, and Blaster took it to another level. T-Wade.
We're not even going to talk about Jake Barnes.
He was the most consistent team roper that's ever lived. I mean, period.
Right.
Jake Barnes is one of my lifelong heroes, and I still, I still think what he told me a saying that I always say. It was the greatest champions have the shortest memory, and that's something that I still try to implement.
That needs to be on a wall. Say it again.
The greatest champions have the shortest memory.
Amen.
And that was from, you can't think about the miss, you got to think about the catch.
Absolutely.
That's coming.
Absolutely.
And for me as an announcer, I used to be horrible where if I would mess up a name or hit my wrong timing on something, I would let that snowball, and the rest of the rodeo would not be as good because I'd let it snowball. So I literally had to implement that into my life, into my announcing, even though it's not team roping or competition. It's still like, okay, messed up, fix it, move on.
Well, it applies to everybody in business deals. I mean, roping, announcing, everything.
Yeah.
Humans are always going to mess up.
Yeah.
Best rodeo in the world and why?
That's tricky.
Okay, don't answer that. I don't want to get you in trouble.
I'll say the National Finals Rodeo. I love the National Finals Rodeo because knowing the blood, the sweat, and the tears that goes into qualifying.
Right.
And now with
dreams there.
Yes. And just merely, and I say this about everybody, I don't care if somebody qualifies the NFR and does not catch a steer or does not ride a bull or does not ride a bronc. I don't care, because for an entire year, they battled and poured their heart and soul and their finances and sacrificed so much to get to that spot where they get to run or ride 10 at the Thomas and Mack Arena.
What a great answer. And that is something that we're living right now. And that no truer words have been spoken.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
This is fun. What else you got? Don't ask me the best horseshoer.
What's the best meal your wife makes?
My wife doesn't cook. That's an easy one. She doesn't cook.
So what do you guys do?
I kind of just fend for myself when I'm home, or I cook. Like I'm a pretty good cook, and so I cook. And
that's an easy way to be on a diet, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I'm not very good at being diet. He's like, oh, mac and cheese sounds good. Let's do that one. I know how to make that.
Kind of like the kerosene one. Let that make it two. Let's do two.
But yeah.
Who's the best healer that's ever lived?
Gosh, that's a loaded question, because the first person that came to my mind when you said that was Claire Brian Cooper.
Right.
But then you have to think Richie Skelton's got one more gold buckle. Right. And then you have to think, well, Jade Corkill. And then now you have to think of Junior Nogueira. And so
cool. They just won the BFI.
Oh, and it's so crazy to me, right? When a team that has been as dominant as they have been for however many years, and then they win the BFI, and it's like, it was almost in a weird way, like an underdog team won the BFI. When you're like, wait, these guys should have won the BFI multiple times.
Right.
But then they win it. Like, and especially with Junior going through what he's gone through with his eyes and the stuff that he's been battling for them, I got emotional when they won it. When they took that victory lap, and I was watching it at my house, it was special.
And how about that short round run? Like, do yourselves a favor and research the short round run.
Yeah.
So Driggers takes a sure shot, and you could see him transition his swing over top of the right horn, just kill zone, and just dirty.
Yep.
Ropes him literally around the eyes. It slides up to the horns right before it turns. In my mind, that's a perfect head loop.
Yes.
And then Junior looks like he takes a same exact shot, kill zone, make sure he's good. And then what was their time?
6'8".
6'8".
Yeah.
Yeah.
They drew a good steer, and they did. When they were 6'8", I was like, they're the winners. And I know that, I mean, obviously Clay Smith, Colby Payne, and then Bubba Buckaloo and Daniel Brayman, they had roped great all day. But I'm like, that run was, we're going to win today.
It's team roping perfection. It looked like he tracked him all day, like the first legal.
Yeah.
But he was just in time through the corner. And just,
this is how much of a geek you and I are about team roping. I noticed the same thing. Driggers was tight with his swing, and then he went outside the right horn. Yeah. Like it was to make just the coverage. Like I want to see the snapshot of it, because kill then zone. The coverage, and then also maintaining the right position so that when he did pull a slack, it was like you said, it was the crispiness of that head loop heard round the world,
right?
Because there was no question that it was going to wave off. There was no, it was perfectly timed, everything.
And he barely gets him dallied, and he's legal.
Yeah.
Like Rickey Green always talked about finished runs. It's not about as fast as you can throw it. It's as fast as you can get them healable when you're heading.
Yep.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
And that's what Driggers did right there.
Yep.
And he does it every time.
He does it every
and then
time.
Those steers look like their hind feet are taped together.
Yeah.
I'm not discrediting Junior. He's amazing.
Well, and those steers at the Feist, they were strong. They were strong, and they're running off, and a lot of them were wide-legged, and Junior had to pull off a couple shots. There was one steer kind of wanting to shuffle and bring his legs up, and then he kind of half-ass went down, and Driggers just
wagon wheel.
Yeah, it was awesome.
He does drop the wagon wheel, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Another Rickey Green saying, but well, just like the gate. Like,
8-foot Preferred under there is what I call it.
Yeah, you can't go left, you can't go right.
You're
going, can't even back up.
Yeah, you're going through the gate, well, no matter what you do. So yeah.
Tell us, can you briefly talk about his eye? What happened?
I don't know all the details. I just know that he's always had allergies, and he used sinus spray, and that caused some stuff with his retina, and then had to have a surgery to repair it. And that's why he was wearing the glasses. I'm sure everybody noticed. Can I ask actually Chelsea Toy this the other day when I saw her? Because I was like, what's the story behind the glasses? I knew that during the NFR, because one of my jobs was to be like the PRCA insider and get interviews with those guys and kind of off the cuff stuff. But I asked Driggers in the NFR, I said, what's going on with Junior? Because he didn't rope good. Like, and he roped better than most, but not to Junior quality,
right?
Not to what we've expected.
Exactly.
And he was like, man, something's going on with his eye. He can't see. Like, and then he wore the glasses of the BFI because like inside light, like what do they call it? Not the lumens, but the LEDs, like something in the inside lights his eyes are very, very sensitive. So he wore those glasses to tone everything down. So it wasn't just a fashion statement.
Right. He also lives in Brock, as you and I both do. Man, I like that guy. Yeah. Have you ever heard his story about why he came over here? Oh, geez. I almost don't even want to do it because I don't want to.
Well, you need to get him over here to do a podcast.
No, I should. But for the audience out here, here's the short version. Forgive me, Junior, if I do this wrong, but when he was like 13, he was in a church, it wasn't really a church, it was like a revival thing where you're outside and all this stuff. And this guy is preaching, and he just stops, and he singles Junior out in the front row, walks down to him and talks to him, and he says, you're going to cross the big water or something like that, and you're going to change children's lives. Or you're going to, do something about do great things and change children's lives. Yeah. And he said, everywhere I've ever gone, children have always loved me.
Yep.
And if you know Junior, you know that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it happens like at least 2 more times. Like big event like that.
Yeah.
Randomly, like someone just only talks to one person. He walks down in the middle of a show, tells them the exact same thing.
Wow.
So then if you watch it, you should Google Junior's in Brazil, roping those muleys.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's got a long story, and Jake Barnes was very influential in getting him going and on the ground, but he gives all the credit to God, and it truly gives me goosebumps, like how he got over here.
Yeah.
And then like my son doesn't care at all about team roping, my oldest one, Trace. He ropes good, but he doesn't want to do it at all. We're at the US finals like 10 years ago, or 8 or something. And he sees Junior, and he always loved Junior. He's never met any of the open ropers. He don't care about the open ropers.
Yeah.
Well, he walks by Junior, and he's like, "That's Junior." I'm like, "What?" So I said, he wanted to take a picture with him somehow, or maybe I wanted him to.
Yeah.
So Junior goes, "Oh yeah, I'll take a picture of him." He just snatches him up and he picks him up, and it's right beside the Junior poster, you know?
Yeah.
And they take a picture, and Trace is like, years later, Junior's doing a call on our men's call, talking about his relationship with Jesus and everything. And I told Trace about it, and he goes, "Is that Junior?" I was like, "No way."
That's cool.
Like there's truly a bond there.
Yeah.
And then Caleb's also got a really cool story. He, forgive me, Kaleb Driggers, if I say this wrong, but he ultimately got tired of being lukewarm and completely quit drinking and won the world the next year. And his relationship with Jesus got better, and his whole life changed. And now they got a baby on the way.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's at first whenever you hear these God stories, you're like, even, my story, but every person who has a relationship with God has a God story. And it's very easy to go, yeah, this is mind blowing. But after a while, like I have to catch myself and I go, what do we expect from our God?
Right.
That's literally what he promises us, not world titles, but he promises us a full life if we follow him. Doesn't mean it's always going to be easy.
Yeah.
Because you look at Driggers or even Junior having the worst NFR of his career, a chance to win the world. He came in number 2 in the world. No, number 2 in the world. Because Wesley maybe it's the other way around. Maybe T Wade was number 1 in the world. Either way, they were first and second, T Wade and Wesley and Junior and Kaleb. So chance to win the world, obviously. They finish outside the top 5. Okay. So that's where you're like, well, being a Christian, everything's supposed to just, if all you Christians, God says he's going to do this. Well, guess what? No, God says our hearts will be full.
Right.
God says that he will take care of us. He will through everything. He always got you. And regardless of, even if we die going through something horrible, we still get eternal life with him. So in essence, it doesn't matter what happens on the earth because we've already won the greatest victory of all. We didn't win it. Jesus won it for us by defeating death so that we could have eternal salvation. And so that's where you hear these God stories. And at some point you got to go, yep, that's my God.
Yeah. I think the hard part is just like figuring out where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like 1 Peter 4, 10 and 11 are it's kind of my mantra. It's like, every single one of us, everybody has a gift, a spiritual gift, and get it on.
Yep.
Ultimately is a short version.
Yeah.
I always find it weird how, like, in the old Westerns, love old Westerns, by the way, but the weakest.
What's your favorite old Western?
Oh, that's dirty.
Is it?
That's dirty.
Is it?
Cowboys.
Cowboys, same.
Cowboys. Okay. Wyatt Earp, either growing up in South Dakota, Dances with Wolves.
Okay, so
any John Wayne movie pick, go.
Not to
just say a single part.
Not to derail your podcast, but something we do on our podcast is we always have this discussion: Tombstone with Kurt Russell or Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner.
I could quote the entire movie of either one, and man, I feel like I like them both. But I like Tombstone because it's intense.
Yeah.
It's intense. Like,
okay.
You can tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me.
Yeah.
Like,
you mangy cur.
Yeah. I mean, oh, geez.
So my argument is Wyatt Earp. One, Kevin Costner is my favorite actor of all time, period. End of story. Not necessarily his politics, whatever. As an actor,
that's the only thing that made me hesitate right there.
Other than John Wayne and Ronald Reagan, I mean, you can't like any actors if that's your basis. But as an actor, and I genuinely believe as a human too, just not his politics, which is fine. Everybody can agree to disagree, whatever. But that's Wyatt Earp for me. It humanized Wyatt Earp. Like Kevin Costner made him a human. And you see how, steals the horse, thrown in jail, dad gets him out, and then he changed his life around forever.
Yeah.
Like, because he realized kind of, what was going on. And then he was just a pillar of, granted, he did some few things extramaritally that weren't
Right.
necessarily agreeable, but yeah, in the fantasy world.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies too. Honestly, my only hang up on bragging on it was Kevin Costner being a liberal. But
Man, you got to move past these things.
I heard he's got a heck of a stuntman though.
He does. I've heard that as well.
And that guy is definitely not a
He is
liberal.
not a liberal at all.
R. That's
Yep.
what I say.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
That's funny. So when we're talking about Justin Mckee, I know he's influential to you.
Yeah.
But one thing that I remember picking on you at a rodeo, not really picking on you. It was more like, hey, you should do this. You know, like I said, you should get, what was I telling you to get? A zebra. You should get a zebra to ride around at the rodeos and announce. And you just snap called me. It's not about me. It's about them. I was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy. And then when we were at the Justin Mckee Broadcasting School and he brought in the announcer of the year to help all of us common folk.
If you didn't just see everybody, I just eye rolled.
And you get up there and you ultimately give God the credit on everything. And the short version from your story that you told those people, if you make it less about you and more about everybody else, that you will be truly a successful announcer. And what's crazy is I just got done doing a Trey Johnson communications course, and it's all what's the greatest communicator, book writer?
Tony Robbins?
No, book writer. Like he's wrote 30 of them, 75 of them.
I don't know. I don't do
anyway,
books.
all he was talking about, everything I've ever learned in communication was summed up by you. And I don't know how much learning you've done on it, but you've obviously have some great influences in your life, because the short version is making it less about you, more about the person listening to you. So tell us about that. Tell us about Justin. And
so I would say growing up, just like any kid in rodeo, you hear, I traveled all around the country with my dad, so I got to hear every announcer. And I loved how Hadley Barrett could ride out into an arena and immediately within 2 minutes, he was friends with every single person in there. Never met him a day in his life. But when he rode out, the way that he communicated with them, the way he connected through that communication, that always just enamored me. And even at that point in my life, I didn't even think about being an announcer.
He's very warm, wasn't he?
Oh, he's so warm. He was your grandpa. Like he was your best friend. He was your grandpa. He was a guy that just, and he just talked through the rodeo and never really got excited. And well, how about that? A 91 point ride. Like he'd say it just like that. But then this guy, Justin Mckee, comes along, he's probably been there. And I hear him, he does the same thing, but he's got that energy that as a young person, I'm just like, huh?
I like that. Yeah.
I want to watch the calf roping, or I want to watch these events because of how he was setting it up. Well, then obviously Bob Tallman is every announcer's hero. And so, but I always thought if I could find a balance or a mix between when I first started wanting to be an announcer, Justin Mckee and Bob Tallman, that I could be the perfect announcer, in my opinion.
Right.
Okay. So with that in mind, I start my announcing career. And what I'd learned was the reason those guys were, what made them so great is they were uniquely them. So then therefore that translated into me realizing, and this took a while, it took 3 or 4 years, 5 years for me to realize, is be uniquely you. And it comes from something my dad told me as well. He said, if you succeed being you. If you fail, at least you failed while being yourself,
Right.
not trying to be someone else. And Liesl Harris, legendary rodeo clown, told me a story. He said, there's only one of you.
This
So
was
be
at
that.
your first rodeo, right?
Yeah, my very first rodeo, exactly, in 2000, first pro rodeo. And so like those things all combined with Liesl and my dad both telling me, be you. Because there's only one Anthony Lucia.
Right.
And there's only one Bob Tallman. There's only one Randy Corley. There's only one Justin Mckee. But Justin has been influential almost from just watching him and watching how he treats people,
Yes.
watching how he not only connects to the people in the audience, but everybody around him respects him and
Mhm.
admires him
Yep.
because he's himself and he's genuinely a good human. And you can feel that when you're around him. Like
Mhm.
you're not like, oh, that's an act. No, the guy that you see on TV is the same guy that you will see as soon as the camera goes off or as soon as the microphone turns off. He's the same guy whenever he steps off out of the announcer stand or off of his horse, the exact same guy.
Exactly.
And that is for a young announcer. I mean, that's huge. Once you realize that, like that's a huge confidence boost because you're like, oh, I can be me. And not everybody has to like me. Period. Not everybody has to like me. But I'm gonna be me. And I'm gonna keep trying to be the best version of me, not of who I think I should be, not of who people think I should be. Talked to my brother about this yesterday. He said, how's your heart? I'm like, what? I'm driving to the golf cart. And he's like, how's your heart? And I go, it's full.
What a question.
And yeah, it was incredible. And I'm like, it's full. And he goes, where do you think that comes from? I said, I finally think that, and it has nothing to do with winning announcer of the year, but I said, I finally think that, or I finally feel in my heart and in my soul that I'm comfortable being Anthony Lucia
Yeah.
at 39 years old, I'm happy being me. You can like me, you can hate me, you can love me, you can want me to die. I can't do anything about that. All I can do is about the person that I am today, the person I'm striving to be tomorrow.
Man, that's special. If you take anything away from this podcast, please listen to that. So tell me about the first rodeo when Lucille sat you down
Liesel, not
after
Lucille.
yes, after the perf,
Yeah.
he sat you down.
Yeah.
What'd he say?
So Liesel Harris is a Hall of Fame rodeo clown, one of the greatest ever do it, many time clown of the year. And he, after we were in Canton, Texas, and I knew I did terrible. Like I knew I'd announced rodeos before, but I don't think you ever really learn how to announce. You learn how to be better, at least in my mind. Like
Right.
I'm never going to solve the Rubik's Cube on how to be a great announcer. I don't know, honestly. All I know is I'd want to be better after every performance that I do, whether I think it was a good performance or a bad performance. Like I just want to be better the next time. But I knew at that point, even though it was young in my career, that I was not good. And so Liesel, I remember I had my Nokia phone and it lights up and it was Liesel. And I answer it. He goes, come to the van. And I'm like, oh no.
Principal's office.
Yep. And I mean, and Liesel's tough. Like he's tough old man and didn't hold anything back. And I always knew this about Liesel. And so I'm like walking down the stairs, just like yep, principal's office. Get to the van and he says, sit down right there. And so I sit on the chair and he's taking his makeup off. And he goes, well, tonight I heard a lot of things. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, I heard a little bit of Boyd, heard a little bit of Bob, heard some Randy, heard Roger Mooney. And every once in a while I heard Anthony Lucia. And he looked at me and he pointed at me, he goes, and that's the guy that I liked.
Oh man.
Whoa. What?
Floor you.
What? And it still takes a lot of confidence. And you've publicly spoke before and made presentations and an award-winning presenter. So like you understand, like when you step out in front of all these people, especially like in your point is almost like what you do is almost even more like for me when you were talking about it earlier is almost more anxiety ridden because it's all of your peers. It's all the people that do the same things as you do.
Right.
Where what I step out there, whether I'm on my horse or whether it's an announcer stand or whatever, and you flip that mic on and you have thousands of people that just all their attention is directed towards you. It's fans of a sport. They bought a ticket to be entertained. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Right.
But there's added pressure in different points. But long story short, when you can find the confidence to finally be okay with being yourself in as a public speaker, that's when you can actually start to build some cool stuff
Yeah.
and do more and more stuff. And then you're like, okay, so this worked and I'm confident enough in who I am. So now I can do this. Now I can do this. Now I can present this a different way. Instead
Exactly.
of here being so up, I can come down and try to deliver it like this
Yeah.
and see if I can get the same reaction. So like that was the starting point, was when he told me that. And then my dad backed it up with, because I got home and I told dad the same thing. And he's like, yeah. He's like, why would you want to succeed being somebody else or succeed modeling yourself after somebody else? Can you learn from all those guys? Absolutely. Have I? Absolutely. Still do. But take bits and pieces and learn, but not what they say, but how they say it and what they're saying. And then think about it, process it, and then somehow learn to add that into who you are as an announcer.
Absolutely.
So,
man, that's pretty special. I feel like I went through that same exact thing too. Like before I did my first speaking engagement, I called my mentor in England, Grant Moon, and I was, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And he was like, and I was trying to use his stuff, you know, because I care a lot. I wanted to be successful and I know
sure.
whatever. And he said, he's ultimately like, stop. He goes, I'm old news. They don't want to hear me. They want to hear you.
Yeah.
Tell them about you. Like, okay.
Yep.
But then the greatest advice, which is just like you said, Chris Cox helped me with, mutual friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you can't beat real. And the one thing when you do his TV shows, we've done 4 of them together, I think. Like, this is how it starts. You get up there and he'll be like, ready? That's the pre-show. Like, just make sure your shirt's buttoned,
Yeah.
I guess. You can't beat real.
Yeah.
People will know if it's scripted. They'll know if it's fake. They'll know if
Yep.
you're lying to them. Like, if you're just real,
Yep.
people resonate with that. And it's like stories stick is another thing. But like even Jesus, he used parables in every single story,
Mm-hmm.
which a parable is just a story.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty crazy.
It is. And that authenticity that's something that Pastor Trey has taught me. It's something Al Buck, they both tried to teach me at a younger age, in my mid-20s, is find out, search for, strive to find who you authentically are. Be your authentic self in every aspect of your life.
Right.
Because then you honestly can't lose.
Oh yeah.
If you're being authentically yourself, even if you lose, you're still winning. Because how many people go through their lives, not even in comparison to those people, but how many people go through their lives never knowing who they are?
Right.
Why do people turn to so many things that are destructive to their lives? Because they don't know who they are.
Exactly.
How do any of us find out who we are? Through a relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's not doing things. It's not, I've reached success and I've reached the top of my field and now I know who I am. No,
Right.
that's just another step.
One
Like
of the
that's,
loneliest times of my life is when I got what I wanted.
there you go. Bingo. That's the whole deal because if you make that your goal in your life,
Mm-hmm.
is reaching that goal. Kaleb Smith and I did a call for the junior Preferred Elite team the other day. And Kaleb said, he goes, I never wrote goals down. He goes, what I did know is that I wanted to make every day the best it could possibly be and get the most out of that day as possible by working the hardest and working to be better at my relationship with God, at my roping, and all of those things. And then the world titles, they just kind of came. He said that.
Just fruit.
One of the first ballot Hall of Famer, 4-time world champion, 10-time NFR qualifier. That's just part of it.
Right.
But like seeking out who you genuinely want to be and like who God and how God sees you. That was the biggest thing that Trey Johnson, because my dad was like, depression was a big part of his lives and he held a lot of guilt from his life and guilt and shame. Those are tools of the enemy.
Oh, for sure.
To bring you down and keep you down.
Right.
And when like Pastor Trey's like, once you see yourself how God sees you, it changes your life. And now I make mistakes every day, all the time. But it's like that doesn't define me. I'm defined by who my Savior is first.
Right.
And who I'm striving to be second.
Absolutely.
And so it's like if we can, and I lose focus of that, it's easy to lose focus of that because it once again turns back to us.
Right.
Well, I did this. Okay. Yeah, but he did this.
Right.
I made this horrible mistake and I ruined everybody's life and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying we can't make decisions and do things in our lives that ruin other people's lives. But if we can constantly keep in mind of how God sees us and then also how he sees everybody around us
Yeah.
and his heart for all people, not just us, not just people that are perfect Christians or, read the Bible every day and know scripture and all this, but how he sees literally every human alive
Right.
that he created. That's when your whole perspective starts to change in life.
Oh, for
And
sure.
like last year, my biggest prayer was I want to love people more because I can easily get annoyed by people. I can easily get bothered by people, by things that they say, things that they do, like it would eat at me. But then I was talking to God about it, and I'm like, how do I overcome this? How can I not get mad when somebody doesn't do their job and it affects the whole production of a rodeo? How can I not get mad when somebody tells me one thing but does another thing?
Right.
Well, I can do that by loving them because God's love for us is our only saving grace through love and grace and mercy and redemption we've gained through his sacrifice by giving us himself and his son for us while we were
Absolutely.
yet still sinners. And it's like, once you embed that into your mind where that becomes your lifestyle, it doesn't make life easier, but it sure makes life better.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so refreshing to hear you say that. And I kind of want to say, like, I'm sorry for this being religious, but it's not it's not religious at all. It's about, like, I think my biggest hang up growing up is like thinking that was religious. It's relational,
Yep.
is what it is. It's like being with God throughout the day is what he wants. Like, you don't go to the church to get a shot in the arm in your daily dose. Like, you go there because you want to.
When churches, a lot of times people think church is for perfect people. Church is literally a hospital.
Right.
Like church is for me, and I told my wife this a couple Sundays ago. I was finally home and we got to go to church together. And I was like, church for me is like the gym. You might sometimes like drag your feet going into it, but never once you're like, man, I wish I wouldn't have went. You never like I've never done that
Right.
where I'm just like, what a waste of time.
Right.
Like literally, like you know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? And so, and I'm not a preacher in any way, shape, or form, and I am a faulted human and have made so many mistakes. But I do know that in my life that had it not been for God and my relationship with Him, that my life would look far different than it does now. And I'm not saying just because I've had some success. Like if God said no more announcing tomorrow, okay, what's next?
Right.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
growing up, it's the weirdest thing. People would always say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, Anthony? I go, and I'm saying young, young. And I would go, whatever God wants me to be.
Wow. Good for you.
And, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
and that's where like I've had people are like, oh, what took you so long to go full into announcing? And I'm like, I had other things that God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And everything that I've done has led up to this.
Led us to
And
here.
I'm
Yeah.
not done.
Yeah. Right.
Like with announcing, like, I don't want to, unless God wants me to, I don't want to announce till I die. Like, I
Mhm.
want to use this as a platform for the next thing and then the next thing until God calls me home. But announcing, as long as I can be beneficial for God's kingdom as an announcer and like bring joy to people, and hopefully they see or feel something they've never felt before and go, what's that guy got?
Oh, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And like
Exactly.
it's such you earlier used the word responsibility. And I don't remember what context you used it, but I thought about that. And it's like, I have a responsibility because I've felt God's love and I've in my life, like if somebody wrote a story about my life, you can look at specific pages and chapters and see where God moved big time, but you know that he was moving the entire time.
Oh, yeah, for
It was
sure.
just whether or not I was seeing it or recognizing it or allowing him to move.
Exactly.
And I would just, I mean, I know this is like you said, we're not getting religious or preachy, but this is just like, this is real life for me. Like, you want to know about Anthony, Lucia? Let me tell you about God.
That's, I don't know if you believed me, but um, I came up and talked to you. I think it was at it's a Pete Car Rodeo. It's an indoor. It's weird because like the chutes are way off the wall, and then
Is it West Monroe?
yes, West
Yeah.
Monroe. Yes. So you did a prayer there that was just crazy. Like I can't remember how you did it, but I reached out to you and do you remember me texting you?
Mhm.
I said, I just want you to know that I thank God for you. And I hope that you keep doing what you're doing because, there's a lot of people that look at church and they're like, they've seen a bad Christian or they've
Mhm.
seen the pastor that had an affair or they did this or whatever, whatever. And any, I would just like to say that anybody that makes you feel like less is not of God.
Yep.
It's not. It's like, can you be like that saying, can you smoke pot and be a Christian? Yes, you absolutely.
Sure.
But the closer you get to God, the less you're going to want to do that.
Yep.
So, like, we're just people with people problems. We all got different versions of issues, and we live in a world full of sin. So it
But
ain't
you
going to get
use that
better.
you use that same comparison earlier when you talked about people and relationships. Like anybody, any person or friend or even family member that makes you feel like less when you talk to them, you don't need to have them in your life.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying like disown your family or something like that, but you definitely need a person has to be aware of those types of people in your life because I've seen through my life the people who relationships change as you continue to grow and who you are
Absolutely.
and who you are not only as a human but as a Christian. And there's not anybody that I don't like. Like I've
Right.
friends from uh 18 years ago, whenever I was in my wildest, or 15 years ago when I was in my wildest and I was making bad decisions, I still have those. They're my friends and my buddies. Do I spend a lot of time with them? No. Are there people that have grown? I'm not going to say with me because then that makes me seem like I'm doing something special when I'm not. But
Right.
are there people that have grown as well? And now we can have different as opposed to what'd you think about old Sheila?
Right.
Instead of talking about the stuff that's not beneficial and helpful in our lives, now we can talk about real life things and how to grow. And that's the progression of life. But as we grow, I have noticed that my circle gets smaller.
Absolutely.
But then it also gets refilled with the right kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
even relationships change and it's been pretty neat. Like just people you thought were your friends, and then you do have a little bit of success, or maybe you're not into the same things as you once were. Well, then they'll push back from you a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. And then one thing that I get into too is like when people, let's say, have harmed you or did
Yeah.
something wrong, what I always fall back on is that, you know what, I forgive them because that's what Jesus says to do.
Yep.
It doesn't mean I have to hang out with them
Nope.
anymore.
I'm with you.
And there's
That's
nothing wrong with that. Like, I think there's so many misconceptions about God and the Bible. Like, do you want a short summary from me on Old Testament? Mess around and find out. It's the original, the
Yeah.
1.0, mess around and find out.
Yeah.
Like, you want to know if God's bad to the bone? Read the OT.
Yeah.
Like, he is
Yes.
not a soft God and he doesn't have a soft son. He gave his life for you
Right.
so we can be morons and still be okay.
Yeah.
So that's enough of that. But I love your outlook, man. So happy for you. And I also live by another thing. I don't know if it's in the Bible, but if you're if you're where God wants you to be, if you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing,
Hmm.
seems like things go a lot better too.
They do. But I think even then, because there's been times where I'm like, God, this is where this is where this is where you put me. Why didn't I get this rodeo? Why didn't this happen? And then 3, 4, 5 months later, something else takes that place. And you're like, if I would have pushed or tried to get myself into this rodeo or something, I would have prevented myself from this.
Oh,
Do
exactly.
you see what I'm
It's
saying?
always
Like
got something bigger.
that's and not even bigger, but because I think bigger, we as humans, we want to say like, okay, instead of taking a job at the Mirage or the MGM during the NFR, he was patient and he got the NFR. Okay. There's something to that, but bigger can also be where God wants you.
Well, for sure.
That's the big part. Like West Monroe, Louisiana, not a big rodeo. Would I rather be, I don't even know what else rodeo is going on then, but a Denver per se. No, this is where God wants me. He wants me at West Monroe.
Yeah.
Period. If I'm supposed to be doing my talk show live with Lucia and all the different things that I do during the NFR and not get the NFR, okay. Like if that's where you want me, because God's, like you said, literally one of the first things you said was God's timing is perfect. So I'm not going to get impatient. And this is probably the greatest lesson I've learned is patience and just trusting God, patience and knowing where he has you is where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And that's not settling, or that's not being, well, this is where I'm at. Poor Anthony, never going to get the NFR. Okay. No, but what I'm saying is be great at whether it's West Monroe or be great at the NFR.
Yeah.
Be great at the Bullfighters Only finals, or be great at the NFR, or be walking down the street.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, even in the Bible, it's like, if you're going to run a race, then run it to win.
Bingo.
Like, geez.
Yes.
Man, that's awesome.
But it's like, one, whose race are you running?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
make sure you're running your race.
Right.
And the race that God has you in. Because if we think we're ready for a 5K, which I'm not even sure how far that is.
3.2.
Okay. 3.2 miles. But yet God is like, keep running these 1 mile races. Keep running them. Keep running them. The next thing you know, when you do get to the 5K, it's simple. Jordan Weaver, Flatbed Podcast,
right,
told me this after I didn't get the NFR last year, and I knew I was in the running, and I was pretty broken. I questioned my whole purpose of announcing when I didn't get it, because I was way too focused on the NFR will affirm what I'm supposed to be doing, or
goal driven. Yeah.
Yep. I was way too focused on it. And the NFR is not something you can earn your way to. It's a selected thing. So it's not like if you rodeoed all year and you didn't make the NFR, well, it's because I should have caught this one, or I shouldn't have done this, or I should have done this. Like, as an announcer, there's nowhere where you can go, oh, I lost the NFR because I mispronounced Paul Eaves' name and I said Paul Evis.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I was just completely, it had rattled me big time, big time rattled me. And Jordan goes, we were just visiting. We're not doing a podcast. And we were just talking. And he goes, if you would have gotten the NFR this year, that would have been your identity. I'm Anthony Lucia, NFR announcer. He goes, instead of when it's God's timing that you get the NFR and you take your identity to that place, as opposed to that place defining your identity.
Right.
It changed my life. Like, that mindset was just like winning announcer of the year. I'm not Anthony Lucia, announcer of the year. I'm Anthony Lucia, rodeo announcer.
That's awesome.
Like, that's who we are. Paul Eaves doesn't walk up. Paul Eaves, world champion. Paul Eaves, husband, father, team roper.
Yeah.
I mean, Lee Olson, you're not defined by the success that you've had with what you've been able to do. I'm Lee Olson, husband, father,
hoof picker.
And I,
for Jamie Olson.
And there you go. But like, you know who you are. You're not defined by plaques or awards or pats on the backs. You're defined by who we are in Christ. And now when you walk into that shop and you've got people that are just in awe because they've watched your YouTube videos or watched or read about you or all these things that you've accomplished. Now when you walk in there, it's not about that. It's like, okay, how can I help this foot?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure.
It's not like I'm Lee Olson, I'm a award-winning blah, 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 blah.
Right.
No. How can I fix this foot? Because it's your basis.
Right. Absolutely. So I went through a time in my life where things got really hard. And honestly, it was when I was making the most money and I had all the cool things that I thought I needed. And Ronnie Hill, do you know him?
The name sounds so familiar.
He ropes good. He's an evangelical pastor in Weatherford.
Okay.
He does a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
Anyway, so I asked him to come over and talk to me. And the short version is that I had everything mixed up that you were talking about. And I wasn't being prideful. I wasn't trying not to be prideful.
Yeah.
But when I felt like he diagnosed me. I felt like I was in front of a doctor naked. Like it was like, when it got all done, he's like, everything you're trying to do isn't bad, but why you're doing it is the reason why it's bad.
Yep.
And he ultimately had me read the book Search for Significance.
Okay.
And the whole point of that book, in my opinion, is that you need to focus. Just everything that you just said is announcer of the year is good. Winning rodeos is good. Having a bajillion dollars is good, whatever. But it's in the order. Like you have to be God's. This all has to be God's. And then you'll have a full heart, and then you'll know who you are. And if not, that's why there's so many miserable, wealthy people. That's why drugs are so popular with successful people, like cocaine and all this enhancing things. It's like, well, if success is so great, then why aren't more people happy?
Yep.
It's like, I remember driving by a bum on the corner there at Main Street, and he's begging for money. And I thought, man, I should give this guy some money. Then I thought, why? He's probably happier than you are.
Right.
So success is not it.
No, it's a derivative. It's a derivative of who you are as a person, because being successful as the world sees it or being successful as God sees it.
Amen. You just summed the whole thing up. Like it's great.
Like how does God see you and how does the world see you? Because do you think God, honestly, and I'm not taking away that I got that award, but do you think God cares that I won announcer of the year?
Right.
Nope. Does he care about how I react to that? How I am before and after that? How I treat people?
Absolutely.
Do you think he cares about my soul and if I'm building the kingdom or if I'm detracting from the kingdom? Or
Absolutely.
am I adding to society, or am I just milking society? Am I adding to the rodeos I go to, or am I just, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
like that's where I feel like so many times, and even me, like trust me, I get caught up in it where I'm like, oh, why'd that guy get that rodeo and I didn't get that rodeo? And it's like, who cares? First off,
Right.
God's going to put you where he wants you. As long as you got your head down working and you keep looking up and talking to God at every step of the way,
Right.
and then keep working hard and treating everything as if it has, as it does, an immense amount of purpose, because he's giving you that. Therefore, we have responsibility to take care of it. And it's like the Apostle Paul says, I'm happy in all of these things. And I'm paraphrasing, but I have been poor. I've sat with kings. I have sat with beggars. He's like, in all these things, I've been happy.
And this guy literally wrote this in prison.
Yeah, exactly. And because true happiness and true peace comes not from what the world can give us, but from only what God can give us, a peace that surpasses all understanding.
If I could channel my inner or my outer Justin Mckee right now, he'd say, it's from your spirit, man.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Love that guy. Speaking of that, you were talking about him and how he is what he is. You know, that sucker's handy too.
Oh yeah.
And a horseman, rope's good. And you're talking about how it's not a show. Like you can catch that guy Wednesday at noon in Hico, Texas, and he'll be dressed like the same thing, just maybe like a little bit like he wore that 6 months ago at rodeo, you know, like the exact same thing, just worn just a little bit.
Not quite as starched.
You know what I find funny though is like he's with Resistol, you and I are too, and their motto is just a pursuit of mine. You know, it's like they live it every day.
Yeah.
I don't want to be an act.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So we've gone pretty long here and this has been awesome. But before we wrap this up, tell me about your wife.
My wife is awesome. Her name is Lisa, and her family is, they're actually from Holland. Wow. She's her and her brother, first generation Americans.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And they moved when they were wanting to leave Holland. Her dad is a dairyman and her mom is a dairy woman, I guess you'd say. And they went to Australia and then to check out and see if maybe that's where they wanted to move. And then they had some friends in East Texas. And so they went to East Texas They ended up loving it and bought a place, and they're very successful as dairy people can be.
Right.
They milk about 800 cows, and so they got a big, big program over there. And then my wife grew up, and they are not horse people in the least. They're cow people.
Right.
But they're not horse people. But my wife always loved horses, and she finally talked her dad into getting a pony, and she rode it as much as she could. And then she got into doing some play days and stuff, and then started running barrels and doing stuff like that. And then found the rodeo queen thing and started being a rodeo queen. And then she's always been amazing at school. So she rodeo queen, got her master's or doctorate, uh, just an incredible human being, loves the Lord and
Wow.
loves horses, pretty sure more than me, but as long as she still loves me a little, I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
She's been the greatest. Again, God's timing is perfect, because I was not ready for, if she would have came around 6 months earlier than she did, I wouldn't have seen what God was trying to do. And I even tried to, about 2 months into us dating, I ghosted her because I knew that this is the woman I was supposed to marry. And I was like, nope, I still want to be, I'm just about to get into my success. And, once you're successful in rodeo, you're the talk of the town. And I still want her to be wild. And I knew I was doing wrong. Like I knew, I knew she was who I was supposed to marry. I knew. And people had always told me, like, when when you meet that person, you'll know. And I was always like, okay, well, I think that's dumb.
Yeah,
And I don't think that's
whatever.
a thing. And so I was at church one day at New River there in Weatherford, and they're like, hey, you know, we have our prayer team coming up after the service. If you want to, I hadn't talked to her for 2 months, and nothing. We dated for 2 months, like great. It was awesome. But and then I got scared, got terrified of it, because I'd seen my dad go through 4 marriages and and my dad's opinion of women was not good.
Right.
And so I was like, this is, I don't, just almost just shake it off and like close your eyes and like, go away.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so I go up for prayer after, and I was in turmoil. Like at that point in my life is in 2015. And I had I was in a weird spot. Like I trick roped, I was announcing, I'd done that stuff at the NFR, and like, I didn't know, I was just boggled, and like team roping wasn't going great. But I didn't want to, I was lost. And I go up for prayer for clarity, and no joke, praying for clarity and like tears running down my face. And I just felt God's peace just flood me, and like he's hugging on me, and like
Is this
turn,
at the altar?
yeah, I was in front of the altar,
Yeah.
and church is over, and I turn around, and there's Lisa.
Oh, geez.
I'm like,
God works fast.
yep. But I see her there with a guy,
Oh.
and I was like, clarity. Perfect. Thank you, Lord. Like, just still overcome with peace. I say hi to her. Uh, just kind of, hey, how you been? Blah, 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 blah. Good, fine, okay, whatever. And I leave, and she texts me and says, it was great seeing you today. And I said, man, it was really good seeing you. And I said, I'm happy that you and your new boyfriend are coming to this church. It's a great, great church. She goes, that's not my boyfriend. That's my roommate. And I finally talked him into coming to church, because I've been wanting to come to this church for a long time. And today felt like the right day.
Oh my God. Woo.
Yeah.
Dang.
And we started talking again, and obviously been together ever since.
Did you say she was Rodeo America?
You like to talk about it more than I do.
I think that's so cool.
Again, it's accolades. Like it's awesome, right?
So
But
you're not proud of your wife?
don't even start that. Of course I'm proud of. She wasn't my wife at that time. So in 2015, let's think, 2015, she ran for Miss Rodeo Texas and lost. And that was right after we got back together. I started helping her run for Miss Rodeo Texas. She didn't win it. And then so we're dating, and she took a job teaching in New Boston, Texas, which is right by like 20 miles or 30 miles from Texarkana. And however you say, reinvigorated their ag program, changed everything at their ag program, had a winning school again, like all the kids rebuilt their greenhouse, did just a great job. Well, I'm just thinking, perfect. She's going to teach a year and then she's going to move over here and we're going to get married and it's going to be great and blah, 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 blah. And again, God's timing is perfect. She tells me one day, she goes, I've got to run for Miss Rodeo Texas again. And I go, no, you don't. No, you don't. That's silly. Because for all those that don't know, when you're a Miss Rodeo Texas and or America, you are not allowed to have a boyfriend.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So we had been dating now for 9 months, roughly, 6 months. And she tells me she's going to run for Miss Rodeo Texas again. And I knew she would win it. Like I knew in my heart, I'm like, she's going to win it because that's just how she is. If she loses one time, she's going to figure out and she's going to work that much harder.
Anybody who's got a doctorate can probably do that.
She's so smart. Terrible at picking men, apparently. But,
Apparently. Everybody's got a hole.
Exactly. That's her weakness. It's a pity project. But anyway, so we kind of get into it and she goes, and then she shut me up real quick. She goes, I've been praying about this for 2 months and God has put it on my heart that I'm supposed to do this. And I go, okay, then I will support you and I will help you get ready. And we practice and I would ask her trivia questions and do speeches. And I actually was able, I'm not taking credit for this, but I helped her of how to give speeches because it was very rodeo queenie at first. It was like, Texas, it's the greatest place in the world.
If you're listening, I wish you could see his face right now.
Very bright-eyed, right. Big smile, talk through your teeth, Texas. And so I helped her get ready and of course she didn't probably need my help, but she thrown me a bone and I helped her a lot. And she wins Miss Rodeo Texas. And then Texas is weird because their coronation is in the middle of the year and then they put their girl in America that December. So she was Miss Rodeo Texas and then she spanked him in America at that competition, won Miss Rodeo America. And that was, again, God working because he knew that I needed to learn, 1, how to trust, 2, how to be trusted. It's really easy to be the best boyfriend in the world when you're getting to see your girl every day. It's very hard to be you're the best boyfriend in the world whenever your girlfriend is basically a world champion rodeo queen traveling around the country and you're doing your own thing and you're barely getting to talk, hardly getting to see each other. And so that was a very hard, and then I lost my dad in 16. So lost my dad. She wins Miss Rodeo Texas, has to move to San Antonio. And I basically can't be in the picture. That was a tough 6 or 8 months for me.
Oh, man.
Just because of losing my number one. And then I basically lost my girlfriend too. I mean, even though she's still my girlfriend and we talked and, I could see her at holidays and stuff. It was like, she was traveling all over the country. And At that point, my career wasn't really doing much. I was doing stuff for Ride TV and doing some broadcasting and announcing 10 or 11 performances a year, just getting by basically.
Right.
And it was tough, but it was also, again, tough times make tough people. And it was one of those things where God knew that I needed to go through that to mature myself. And then whenever she was done with being Miss Rodeo America, then we got engaged like 5 months later in 2018. But I was mentally there because I'd showed myself that I could deal with the separation and still remain loyal and not just be a transactional boyfriend in a sense, if that makes.
Yeah.
And 2, I learned that I could trust her beyond belief because she had every cowboy. She's very, very pretty. And she had every cowboy for a year and a half running at her.
Right.
And and I would call like buddies and I'm like, hey, you seen Lisa there? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, is she, being a good person? And they're like, yeah. Anybody, I had one buddy, he's like, well, we were all at an autograph signing and some young buck, team roper, calf roper, started trying to talk to her and everything like that. And she politely was like, I have a boyfriend. I'm pretty sure you have a girlfriend and you shouldn't be talking to me.
Wow.
And like, she's very, she's like that.
That's
And
awesome.
it was just cool because it was like I had all from my childhood, and we're not even going to get into this. I had a very hard time trusting women because my mom was not she was a bad, terrible mom. And so she was done when I was 4. So
Wow.
tough trusting women.
You're right.
Lisa, through that year and a half, and again, it's a God deal. God showed me that there are really great women in the world, like plain and simple. And this is one of them. And I'm giving her to you. And
Don't mess this up.
yes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said that. I think he used a different word, actually. Never heard God cuss until that.
Said Anthony?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, but no, she's been awesome. And yeah, I'm so thankful with
man.
what I've got going. And she's incredible. And every day I'm just like, goodness gracious, just because she's such a hard worker. And she's, again, through the maturation process of me, she had such a hand in that, not because she was teaching me how to be mature, but just from the person she is, made me want to be a better person.
Absolutely.
And then you stack on responsibilities financially and mortgages and trucks and trailers and barrel horses,
right.
and all of these things. Then that level of responsibility, it can be daunting at times, but you're like, you know what? God's got us here. I'm going to work hard, and everything's going to take care of itself. And by the grace of God, it has. And I'm beyond thankful for him.
That's awesome. You know, one of the most, what just happened?
Eddie's calling.
Goodbye, Eddie. Appreciate it. Got to plug him in. I think one of the most proud times I've been of you was when there was somebody trying to talk you into ultimately roasting someone on a mic in a large audience.
Yeah.
And you stood up, and it would be hard in your situation because it'd be easy to say yes. And this Anthony Lucia just goes, I will not cuss on a microphone. And it's not saying you don't cuss. It's just saying, I'm so proud of you for not.
He was wanting me to say a certain word that I refused to say. In this podcast, I've said ass and damn.
Right.
So clearly I will do it. But he was wanting me to do it in a very negative and mean and hurtful way, and also say a word that I don't like, and I will say it on my own, and I'm not proud of that, and I'm working on that.
Right.
So stop judging me. But he was wanting me to say it, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, that was
like, it is what it is.
That was pretty awesome. Just because of the tone it sets and the standard, and there's people watching you, just kind of like that. They have a sign in Denver that says, somewhere there's a little kid watching you.
Mm-hmm.
You owe it to them to be the best you can be.
And on the same token, it's like, I know God's always watching, and it's not like I'm watching you, Anthony, don't mess up. But also, like, that's the least I can do is strive to be better. And granted, again, I will say it again, I make mistakes. I cuss.
Right.
And I do things that I shouldn't do and say things that I shouldn't say, but I'm working on it. I'm a whip, is what I always tell my wife. A whip. She's like, what's a whip? I go, work in progress.
That's what I always say. Like, my biggest issue is people that make excuses.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, you're trying. How about you start trying and show some results? Then I find myself in saying the same thing you say, where you go, I'm trying.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a quote from Yoda from Star Wars that I love, and I'm gonna read it. It's about trying. Whoops, that's not it. Oh gosh. Basically, it's do not try, simply do. There is no try. Because if you think about it, when you're trying, what are you then doing? You're doing. So don't think of it as trying, because trying leaves the room for, you're already setting yourself up to fail.
You're attempting. Yeah.
Well, you're already saying, I could fail at this. Don't even think that. Do. And then if you fail, you fail. Move on. But do it.
Winners win because they don't give up, not because they fail.
Bingo.
Tell us about how COVID affected you.
Oh gosh. A lot. So in 2019, I signed an exclusive deal with Ride TV to do PBR Ride to Glories. I was going to make more money, and I did make more money than I've ever made in my life. And I was guaranteed 41 shows in 2019, which I did. They were all PBRs, PBR Velocity Tour. And it was unbelievable. 2019, which worked out perfect because I had to pay for my own wedding. And we had a nice honeymoon. Like it was awesome. Then 2020 starts, and again, exclusive. I don't know if everybody knows what that means. Exclusive to Ride TV. So I signed a deal with them where I was working for them. I basically forfeited, other than the 2 or 3 rodeos that I already had, or I think I had 4 or 5 rodeos actually. I had 5 rodeos. Other than those, not taking any more because I was whatever Ride TV, whatever kind of things they were going to do, that was with them. Okay. 2020 hits and they shut down everything.
So you're not getting paid. There was no contract of you will be paid a minimum of X.
So there was.
Oh, okay, good.
There was, but they didn't honor it.
Oh,
because they didn't have any content. So they had hired me for these 41 shows. So we did them in January and February. And then March rolls around. They start canceling events that I'm supposed to be going to for the next 3 months. Canceling events, canceling events, canceling events. Next thing you know, I get a call from the head guys at Ride TV. This is breaking us. We're done. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
We're done. Like, what do you mean we're done?
So the contract only holds me down, not you?
Yep. Basically. And I probably could have fought it, but it was one of those things where I felt like in my heart, I felt like it was a God thing. And so got pretty sketchy there for a while, money wise. But through that, it made me go, God, where do you want me? Because I signed this big deal. Didn't really talk to God about it much. But I'm like, we're going to be making so much money.
Right.
Like no expenses, so much money. Like this is, of course, this is a God deal. And I'm not saying it wasn't. But again, I didn't pray about it. I was just like, you're telling me that I'm going to make 6 figures? Like, yes, I'm in. So then COVID hits, all that goes away. And I have 3 rodeos. And so I go and I do the Ute Stampede in Nephi, Utah. And this was a pretty neat deal. So they say we can only do half capacity. Can you guys come for less? And it was me and Mike Mathis, and absolutely anything at this point is
Right, yeah.
like anything. Like I was getting ready to go try to like get a real job. Like, I mean, it was there, and this is 2020. And so go to Nephi. They paid us. I think they ended up actually paying us the same. Like when they handed us our checks, they're like, we had a few people slip in, more people slip in, over the 50%. So we're going to be able to pay you the same. Like that was huge for me.
Wow.
Because they didn't have to do that. And it's a rodeo committee. It's an incredible committee.
Hello, loyalty.
Yep. So I get home. Probably 2 weeks later, that I get a call from the chairman, and he goes, would you be okay if we sent you some extra money? And I'm like, what? I don't understand. What do you mean? He goes, well, after we got everything looked at in our books, we had some money left over and we'd like to send it to you guys. Wow. That like, it still like gives me goosebumps and like makes me emotional because they didn't have to do that. I was just grateful that they even had a rodeo. And then they found some more money and they wanted to give it to us, knowing that most of our, especially for me, like, and I didn't share any of this stuff with them. Like, right. I'm not going to be like, well, God,
times are tough.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, and then they send me money so then like that, like stirred something inside of me. So all I'm banking on is that Ride TV's coming back. Like that's all I'm thinking about. But that loyalty from them, that they didn't have to do that, but that's rodeo at its whole.
Right.
It's not a corporate business. It's not anything. That is rodeo to the core, that type of loyalty that they showed me.
Absolutely.
And God started like working on me and like talking to me and he's like, no more PBR stuff, no more TV stuff. You're rodeo. That's where I want you, is rodeo. And you'll also have to remember that in April of COVID, I did the first live sporting broadcast on major network television, which was a PBR from the Lazy Arena. I was the lead broadcast host of that. So and that was for the actual PBR and for CBS Sports and for CBS. That wasn't even for Ride TV. That was for them. And so I did that. Well, then 3 months later, it's in July. That was in April. So now I'm thinking, and they're telling me that they're going to groom me as the next Craig Hummer, who is their lead broadcaster for the PBR and all the CBS shows. And the CBS money is unbelievable money.
Huh.
And so in my mind, that's what I'm thinking. Like, as soon as they start this all back up, I'm, back into that. Well, then Nephi happens. And then God starts on my heart and he's like, no more PBR, no more PBR. Like, you're rodeo. So I pray about it, keep praying about it, talk to my wife about it. And she's like, is that really what you want to do? I mean, you've done the last 3 years have basically all been broadcasting and TV shows for Ride TV and then the PBR and Ride Pass and Pluto. I mean, I've been to that point 2 PBR World Finals, doing stuff for them and like hosting like really heavy in the PBR stuff. And I'm like, this is what God wants us to do. And she's like, Anthony, you have 3 rodeos for next year. And I go, I'm telling you, this is so. In 2019, I had 11 performances, 11 pro rodeo performances. 2020, I had 10 pro rodeo performances. Do you want to guess how many I had and granted, I had 3 rodeos in 2021. Do you want to guess the number of rodeos that I had in 2021? I made the decision in August. No more PBR. Made a post about it. Talked to the PBR. This, that, and the other. Okay. Again, 3 rodeos. So we get through whatever. I get a call in early 2021. So rewind real quick. 2020 over New Year's, I'm getting my haircut. I'm about to head to my family's house, and my brother is a doctor in Temple we're going to do our Christmas and have a New Year celebration. I get a call from Tony Reyna with the Texas Circuit Finals, says, hey, Mike Mathis is sick. We need you down here. I'm like, okay, when? They're like, rodeo starts in 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So run home, grab my stuff, haul butt down there, no research.
So you were like in Weatherford when this happened?
Yeah, I was in Weatherford.
Goodness.
Yeah. I was in Weatherford, get my hair cut. And so I go home, grab my shirts, drive down there, and I get to announce the Texas Circuit Finals. That's pretty cool.
Right.
That next January, I get a call from the PBR, and they're like, hey, we need you to go to Florida. Because that's when they moved their three of their major events to Florida, like the places where they do the rodeos.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to do the PBRs there.
Oh, wow.
And so they're like, these are all CBS events. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is close to being transparent, $50,000.
Wow.
From these 3 events. And I mean, and we're hanging on, but I mean, we're doing okay at this point. Like, we created the deal, the Hui Fest, Joey Austin with Hui and I created the deal at Cowtown Coliseum, was able to make some money there. So all good. So long story short, I can literally feel in my heart, God going, don't do it, man. I've set you on a path. Just trust me. And I'm like, God, I have 3 rodeos.
It's $50,000.
It's $50,000. Like, and so I called Rickey Bolin.
Oh, nice.
I called Rickey Bolin, and I kind of told him the whole deal. And he goes, Anthony, I'd stick to your guns. And I'm like, Rickey, it's $50,000. Like, and he's like, I'm telling you, stick to your guns. So, okay. So I keep praying about it. I asked Shauna, I said, can you give me 2 days? She goes, yeah, I'll give you 2 days. So 2 days go by, I call her and I go, hey, I thank you so much, but I'm going to stay full bore rodeo. And I appreciate it so much because this would be huge for my family, but I just feel like it's going to be okay. No joke. The next day, I get a call from Randy Bernard with the American.
Wow.
Anthony, we want you to come announce the American. 2 days after that, I get a call from the PRCA Anthony, you've been selected to announce the Ram National Circuit Finals Rodeo in Kissimmee, Florida,
What's the time frame again?
January.
So you tell them no, and then Randy
The
Bernard
next day is
calls.
Randy Bernard. 2 days after that is the PRCA saying I've been selected to announce
Oh
the Ram
my
National
God.
Circuit Finals.
That's amazing.
And then that year, at the end of the year, I had announced 73 pro rodeo performances.
Wow. God is good, man. That is crazy. I gotta know though, what was Ricky's basis of sticking to your guns? Does like God's calling or
I don't know. I mean, what he told me, he goes, you belong in rodeo. He goes, that's where your heart
and
is.
this is coming from a bull rider.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And he goes, Anthony, you belong in rodeo. He's like, that's where your passion is. That's where your love is. He said, you were in the PBR for the money. He goes, do you love PBR? And I go, it's not that I don't love it. I said, but I love rodeo. He goes, there's your answer.
Wow, I could not agree more.
So pretty neato.
Man, just like I was talking about Chris Cox, you can't hide real. Like when you're announcing, it's easy to listen to you because we believe you, Like I couldn't imagine like a PBR. I mean, as hard as you fake it, I mean,
No,
it's
and I love
another bull ride.
So I announced the PBR in Ivins, Utah a couple weeks ago, and it was a blast. Like it
Right.
was a touring pro, but it's still entertaining and it's still fun.
Right.
But it's the more of it had to do with, for me, the TV side of it.
Oh,
Because, and this is going to be hard to explain, but my heart is for the people that have saved up their money to come to that event. I'll never forget this vivid. It would have been the last one, the last PBR that I did, which was it wasn't Bangor. I don't remember, but anyways, we're sitting there getting ready to we're on the set, the cameras are all around us, and we're about to start the show. I look over to my right and you can see a family. I think there was a mom, dad, and there's 3 kids. You could tell they didn't have a lot of money, but you can tell that they just went and bought a t-shirt from the concession stand. Little kid had a soda and his eyes were just so big at this soda. And another kid had a cotton candy. And you could tell that they didn't have a lot of money just by their clothes other than their t-shirts. And you could just sense that they had been looking forward to this event. God knows how long.
right.
And I was going to be, I have nothing wrong with television, but I was going to be talked to somebody who walked in, grabbed the remote, sat down, and clicked on. I wanted, and the way that God has put on my heart is for the people who make the effort to support what we love.
What a good perspective.
And that's one of my biggest driving forces for how hard I work. And not only about the competitors and making sure that they're taken care of in the sense that I know some stories about them and I know their stats, but I also, the reason is because I want all of those people who spent their hard-earned money to support that rodeo, to buy concession stands, to buy merchandise, to hopefully create more rodeo fans through their kids. Those people, that's where my heart is, because I genuinely care about those fans. Like I want that to be the best experience of their life, is that rodeo.
Absolutely. And the announcer has so much influence on said people.
Oh.
Man, that's pretty special. Rodeo truly is a very special deal, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. And all of Western sports, like as a whole.
Mm.
And I mean, PBR, like I said, I have nothing against it, but that wasn't my calling.
Right.
It wasn't my calling, but I love what the PBR has done for not only the athletes, but for the bull raisers and everybody involved. Like it all, with high tide, all ships rise. So I love what the PBR has done. The WCRA, they've offered a lot of opportunities for athletes to make more money. But professional rodeo, the PRCA, that's at this point in my life, that's where God has me. And I couldn't be happier.
Man, that's awesome. Well, tell us, what's the rest of the year look like? I mean, I feel like I just look at you and just see like you're showered in blessings in your life from.
It's the year it's going to be the best year ever. And it was funny. I did a Cowboy Channel interview with Haley Novak the day after the award ceremony, and she's like, "So how does this buckle change your year?" And I go, "Man, it's really cool, and I'm excited to be wearing it, but it doesn't change really anything for my year because thankfully, I already had an incredible year lined up, and like I'm excited to get started with everything." And I even said this, I was like, "The buckle doesn't define me. It's every single rodeo and the person that I am every day that's what my focus is on." And it's just an awesome year, and I'm thankful, I guess. I mean, I not I guess I am thankful, and I don't want people to think like, "Oh, Brother Anthony just got everything figured out." I don't. I'm figuring crap out every single day, every minute, and that's just the long and the short of it.
It's got to be fun though. All those rodeos that you're going to go to when you see them, and they're like, and they're talking about you being announcer of the year. And then you explain that you're announcer of the year because of them.
Yep.
And I know you do that.
Yep.
I mean, that's got to be fun just to watch them just kind of swell up and shoulders back.
Well, they don't think about it like that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like what I've told everybody. This isn't an individual thing.
Right.
Success in this industry,
Right.
no matter what you're good at, no matter whether you win a world title, what does every world champion do? I could not do this without my support system,
Right.
without my family, without my horses, without the great bucking bulls and horses, whatever event that it is. Our industry is literally based upon people. And I would be nothing without obviously God, but the committees and the contractors and the events that he's touched their hearts and their minds to hire me. And then I get to go in there and be a part of it. Like, it's because of those people.
Absolutely. Speaking of contractors, how cool is Pete Carr?
The best.
He's amazing, isn't he?
He's awesome. And that's so funny. We did a podcast with Cole Reiner, Jess Pope, world champion, Ty Pope, college champion, and Cole's been the finals 4 times. And Brad Narducci, my co-host, he goes, "Who do you guys think Anthony's favorite stock contractor is?" And they literally all 3 go, "Pete Carr." And I'm like, what do you mean? And Cole goes, "Pull your knife out." And I pull my knife out and it says Pete Carr Pro Rodeo. He goes, and Jess goes, "And your golf bag. You showed it to me. Where'd you get that golf bag?" I'm like, "Pete Carr." And he's like, "What rodeo did you just leave?" And I'm like, "Oakley, Utah." "Who was that for?" "Pete Carr." And so, yeah, I love Pete. He's just a great guy, and he believes in me, and he's been nothing but great to me since before I ever. I mean, when I was trick roping, I got a picture on my phone from, I think it's 2013. I went and did a rodeo in Mississippi for him.
Oh yeah.
And we got a picture together. And
wow.
Yeah, Pete's just been awesome.
My favorite thing about Pete is like he needs nothing from you.
No.
Like he's just this golden person. Like we see him at a lot of rodeos and he's like, there at one time, he's like, "Hey, how you doing? What do you need?" I'm like,
"Yep."
"What?"
Exactly.
He's like, "Yeah, what do you need? You've been rodeoing for 2 months. What do you need?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, seriously, I'm good."
Yep.
And we had our trailer rear-ended one time in Arizona, and he called me and he goes, "I have a nice living quarters. Why don't you just come get it?" I said, "Pete, we're actually going to be okay." Like, we hooked a chain up to it to get the door open in Reno. We get all that. And then pretty soon Pete's like, "I'll send it to you."
Yeah.
Just say yes.
Yeah.
And then my 2 boys, he hires them to work and sell all the guns and all the swords and stuff, the merchandise at the rodeos. And he's funny because he doesn't need their help.
Right.
He does it because they like it. And then he gives my oldest son way too much money. Anything is way too much.
Yeah.
But he gives them money and he's like, "Wow." But he's teaching them to work hard. And I really appreciate people pouring into my kids. And then the youngest one, Eli, he always gives him guns and candy and food.
Yeah.
And he's really special to us.
Yeah. Pete's awesome. And there's so many good guys. Like, I mean, we've talked about a bunch of them, and there's so many good people in our industry. And like, it's just hard even to quantify. Like, we could literally make a day podcast of going through people that are good people in our industry.
That would be a good one. That would. Another random fact is Pete is with Resistol and lives it every day.
yeah.
And Rickey is obviously with Resistol and lives it
Yeah,
every
just
day.
retired, and I was sad to see it.
So we're just going to say this is sponsored by Resistol.
Well, let's
Thank
do
you.
it. I'm with it.
We live it every day.
I'm with you. Go to resistol.com to get your straw hats today. It is straw season, and they have a very wide selection. I personally suggest to check out the Cody Johnson line. They come pre-shaped just like Cody wears them. And but any one of the Resistols are awesome.
Devin Marcum, another good dude.
I'm just kidding. No, I love Devin. We always have a lot of fun together. Him and Justin Thomason and Joe, just great people. And then Mary Jane. There's not one person on the Resistol team that I know of that I'm just like not a good
Well, I think
person.
there was, and he didn't make it.
Who?
I don't know. One knows him now.
Okay, exactly.
It's in a hole somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is such a great time. I think no matter what people do in life, there's a lot of things they can pluck from this and apply to their life. So thank you, Anthony. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to give anybody?
Yes. Everything that I said and all the knowledge that I shared is worth exactly what you all have paid for it. Nothing. So
yeah, and that is typical Anthony, not taking credit, but we know this was all gold, and we wish you nothing but the best. And thank you for everything that you do for Rodeo.
I'm thankful for you, and thanks for this podcast, because it's pretty neat to be able to tell the stories that you guys are telling on here, and it's impacting a lot of people. So thanks for what you're doing, Lee.
You bet. And I hope you have seen the blood and the sweat that led to his blessings, and hope you have a great day. God bless America.